Chapter 763. Zhouwen searched the vicinity of the Great Wall for a long time, but he didn't find the tiny palm symbol. The afternoon passed just like that. By the time he returned to the courtyard, the sky had already darkened. When he opened the door, he realized that Wang Chan was sitting on a stool in Zhou Wen's room in a daze. Upon seeing Zhou Wen return, Wang Chan opened her mouth as though she wanted to say something, but in the end she only said, "You're back. What's the matter?" Zhou Wen sat by the table and poured himself a cup of water. "And nothing. I originally wanted to chat with you, but it's already so late. I should leave. We'll talk about it later." Wang Chan hesitated for a moment before ultimately saying nothing. She got up and prepared to leave. She had been in an intense psychological battle today. Although Wang Chan wanted to prove that even without Xiao Si and Wang Lu by her side, Zhou Wen wouldn't suffer any misfortune because of her, she still lacked confidence in herself. However, after struggling internally for so long, Wang Chan still lacked confidence in herself. She wasn't willing to let Zhou Wen take the risk. "Are you free tomorrow?" Zhou Wen suddenly asked Wang Chan. "I'm free," Wang Chan answered subconsciously. "I want to visit the nearby dimensional zones tomorrow, but I'm not familiar with the roads. Can you take me there?" Zhou Wen asked with a smile. "Go to a dimensional zone?" Wang Chan was first delighted before her expression dimmed. She shook her head and said, "It's best you get sister to accompany you." "Your sister isn't free, but aren't you free? Can't you accompany me?" Zhou Wen said. "My luck isn't too good. I'm afraid that going to a dimensional zone with you will bring you bad luck," Wang Chan said with her head lowered. "What a coincidence. My luck isn't very good either. It just so happens that a negative is a positive." "Perhaps my luck will improve," Zhou Wen said. "My luck is really bad. If you are by my side, you will be very unlucky. You might die." "I'm serious. I'm not joking," Wang Chan said as she bit her lip. Zhou Wen smiled and raised the saber in front of Wang Chan. "Do you know the name of this saber?" Wang Chan sized up the bamboo blade in Zhou Wen's hand in puzzlement. After looking at it for a while, she said in surprise, "Could it be that this is the bamboo blade of the Four Gentlemen Blades? Is this a replica?" "Of course not. This is the genuine bamboo blade. Its owner died in the past. Perhaps it's because I was too unlucky that I ended up becoming more compatible with it. I've always been fine. Don't worry. I'm a tough person, so I'm not afraid of these things. Go back and rest. We'll head to the Great Wall tomorrow morning to take a look. Then..." "All right." Wang Chan thought for a moment and felt that it was safer to go to the Great Wall. This was because the Great Wall was filled with undying battle souls. They ranged from the mortal stage to the epic stage. However, dimensional creatures like undying battle souls were very strange. They only wandered the Great Wall and humans couldn't harm them. They didn't seem to have any consciousness and only wandered the Great Wall without attacking humans. In fact, it would be useless even if they attacked humans. Just as humans could not touch them, they could not touch humans either. Upon hearing that Zhou Wen was heading to the Great Wall, Wang Chan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Going to such a place, even if something unlucky happened, it wouldn't be too bad. After Wang Chan returned, Zhou Wen lay in bed and opened the newly downloaded Ancient Sword Tomb dungeon. The Ancient Sword Tomb Instance dungeon looked very desolate. At first glance, it was just a stretch of undulating hills. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that it was not a hill at all. Instead, it was a mass of graves of various sizes. Some of the tombs were relatively small, like small mounds. Some were hundreds of feet tall, like continuous hills. However, unlike the tombs of ancient humans, there were no tombstones in front of the tombs. At the highest point of each tombstone was a sword. The swords on each tombstone were different. There were short swords, long swords, heavy swords, iron swords, jade swords, swords carved from bones, and porcelain swords made of clay. All sorts of swords were dazzling. Every sword was stabbed into the tombstone like a different kind of tombstone. Although very few outsiders had the chance to enter the ancient sword tomb other than the Xia family, the ancient sword tomb was a famous dimensional zone. Back then, Xia Zhihuang's first mythical companion beast came from the ancient sword tomb. Back then, the number of mythical pets humans had could be counted on one hand. Xia Zhihuang reigned supreme with his sword and fought for the Federation citizens. At that time, the 6 heroes were like gods to humans. Of course, no one knew of the existence of mythical companion beasts back then. They only knew that the sword in Xia Zhihuang's hand was very powerful, but they didn't know that it was a mythical companion beast. Later on, the Xia family became famous for using sword. Most sword-type companion beasts came from the ancient sword tomb. Some people even suspected that primordial sword immortal came from the ancient sword tomb, but no one from the Xia family admitted it. There was something else that left Zhou Wen puzzled. For some reason, he didn't see Xia Zhihuang use a mythical companion beast when he fought him. As he walked in the ancient sword tomb, Zhou Wen sized up his surroundings. He had only heard Xing mention that the swords in the ancient sword tomb were lifeless unless one reached out to pull them out. The swords didn't emit any aura or power, so it was basically impossible to tell their levels. Only by pulling them out could one know their true levels and strength. Pulling out a sword was also a technical task. This was because one didn't know the sword's attributes, abilities, and level. If one wasn't strong enough and pulled out a high-level sword, it was very likely that they would be killed. However, if one was strong and the sword they pulled out was only a low-level dimensional creature, it would be useless to kill it. Zhou Wen didn't know much about swords, so he didn't plan on choosing one. He reached out and grabbed a vine sword that was stabbed into the small grave beside him, hoping to pull it out. This was because the sword tomb had a strange force field that protected the swords stabbed into the tomb. If he wanted to destroy the swords here, he had to pull them out first. However, after Zhou Wen used his strength twice, the vine sword seemed to have taken root and wasn't pulled out by Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen couldn't help but carefully size up the vine sword. He saw that it looked like it was carved from a grayish-black ancient vine. The sword was slightly curved, and the blade didn't look sharp. Its shape was very strange. Could it be that I encountered a big guy the first time I pulled out a sword? Zhou Wen spread his legs and held the hilt with both hands. Then, he gathered all his strength and pulled it up. However, the vine sword remained motionless as though it had become one with the small grave mound. Zhou Wen was alarmed. His strength was already considered top among epic creatures, but even he couldn't pull it out. This meant that the vine sword was definitely extraordinary. Perhaps it was a mythical dimensional creature. Zhou Wen summoned Tyrant Behemoth and got it to pull out the vine sword. Chapter 764. Tyrant Behemoth's immense strength was boundless. It held the vine sword with one hand, and the vine sword was about the same as a chopstick in its hand. Tyrant Behemoth exerted strength, but the vine sword remained motionless. It still didn't pull it out. After using 2 more times of strength, it still failed to pull it out. Tyrant Behemoth lost its temper as it grabbed the vine sword with both hands. Like a tug-of-war, it used its feet to push down as it pulled up with both hands. Zhou Wen was alarmed to discover that Tyrant Behemoth, which had used all its strength, still failed to pull out the vine sword. However, the tiny grave shook from its pulling, but the vine sword didn't move at all. What's going on? Zhou Wen was baffled. He knew that he had definitely been lucky to encounter an extraordinary sword. However, as he knew too little about the ancient sword tomb, he didn't know what this situation meant. After some thought, Zhou Wen got Tyrant Behemoth to activate absolute strength, hoping to use brute force to pull out the vine sword. Boom! With absolute strength activated, Tyrant Behemoth's body became heavier as its feet sank into the ground. Tyrant Behemoth exerted strength with its arms and pulled. Boom! Boom! Zhou Wen was dumbfounded to discover that the sword graves of all sizes around him were trembling violently as though there was an earthquake. However, The veins on Tyrant Behemoth's body bulged as it pulled out the sword with all its might. The vine sword was still stuck in the tiny grave mound. It didn't come out as though it had taken root. Tyrant Behemoth constantly exerted strength. Under the infusion of absolute strength's terrifying and boundless power, the surrounding sword graves shook more and more violently. The various swords stabbed into the graves also emitted sword hums. Instantly, thousands of swords hummed in unison as sword hums echoed everywhere. Only the vine sword was still silent and couldn't be pulled out. Zhou saw that Tyrant Behemoth's strength had already been pushed to its limits. The entire ancient sword tomb seemed like it was about to be overturned by an earthquake, but the vine sword still hadn't been pulled out. He knew that the possibility of pulling it out was very low. Zhou heart stirred as he ordered Tyrant Behemoth to abandon the vine sword. He ran to a sword grave beside him and pulled out the huge sword on it. The moment the broadsword appeared, terrifying crimson flames spewed out. However, the flames were nothing in front of Tyrant Behemoth. They couldn't even burn its fur. Tyrant Behemoth stuffed them into its mouth and chewed a few times before swallowing the broadsword. Killed the epic creature, blazing greatsword. Zhou saw the game notification, but the sword had been swallowed by Tyrant Behemoth, leaving nothing behind. After Tyrant Behemoth released the vine sword, the earthquake in the ancient sword tomb stopped. The ancient swords no longer buzzed. Tyrant Behemoth pulled out two ancient swords at the same time and collided the two ancient swords, snapping them together. As Tyrant Behemoth charged forward, it crazily drew and snapped its swords. No sword could withstand a single strike from it. Soon, 30 to 40 swords were snapped. Zhou kept looking at the game notification. Some dimensional crystals dropped, but the highest one was at the epic stage. He hadn't discovered any mythical swords. There were tens of thousands of swords in the ancient sword tomb. Tyrant Behemoth pulled them out one by one, but it didn't encounter any vine swords. All of them were easily pulled out. Zhou was now certain that there was nothing wrong with the ancient sword tomb in-game. Instead, he had hit the jackpot. The first sword he encountered after entering was actually an extraordinary sword. Unfortunately, Zhou didn't know much about swords. No matter how he looked at it, the vine sword wasn't outstanding at all. It was no different from a withered vine. After snapping nearly 100 swords, Zhou got Tyrant Behemoth to turn around and pull out the vine sword. The outcome was the same. Tyrant Behemoth exerted its strength crazily, causing the ancient sword tomb to quake, but the vine sword remained motionless. Zhou had no choice but to temporarily give up on pulling out the vine sword. He got Tyrant Behemoth to continue pulling out the other swords to see if he could gain anything. As he pulled, a sword wasn't directly snapped by Tyrant Behemoth after it was pulled out. The sword flashed with divine light as it scratched Tyrant Behemoth's palm and broke free. Zhou was alarmed. Tyrant Behemoth's absolute strength was still present, but the sword was able to injure Tyrant Behemoth. Although it had only scratched a little, it was enough to prove its sharpness. After the sword broke free, it quickly circled around Tyrant Behemoth and released sword beams to attack Tyrant Behemoth from time to time. However, the sword beams were shattered by Tyrant Behemoth, unable to injure Tyrant Behemoth at all. Zhou carefully looked at the sword and could only see the sword beam, but he couldn't see the sword's body. He was even more surprised as he used Truth Listener's power to observe it carefully. He immediately realized that the sword was invisible to begin with. The sword seemed to be transparent. One could only see the sword beam, but not the sword's body. However, Zhou was certain that the sword was corporeal. It wasn't a spirit body, nor was it a pure sword beam. A transparent sword? Interesting. Just as Zhou was sizing up the sword, he heard Tyrant Behemoth's angry roar. The transparent sword flew too quickly. Tyrant Behemoth failed to catch it after a few attacks. In its rage, it unleashed all its absolute strength. A suction force that resembled a black hole immediately reduced the sword's speed greatly. Tyrant Behemoth charged forward and grabbed the transparent sword. The transparent sword was extremely sharp as it sliced through Tyrant Behemoth's palm, causing Behemoth's blood to drip down from the gaps between its fingers. However, Tyrant Behemoth ignored it. It grabbed the transparent sword with both hands and exerted its strength in an attempt to snap it. Zhou couldn't see what the transparent sword looked like, but he could see Tyrant Behemoth's hands slowly move down. When the two claws were about to touch each other, there was a loud bang as though a tough steel plate had snapped. In the next second, Zhou saw a notification pop up in-game. Killed mythical creature, light concealment sword. Discovered companion egg. Zhou was overjoyed. It was within his expectations to encounter a mythical sword, but it surprised him that a companion egg had dropped. After all, his luck with companion eggs dropping wasn't that good. He sized up the spot where the light concealment sword had snapped, but he didn't see the companion egg. He immediately came to a realization. Perhaps the light concealment sword's companion beast was transparent and invisible. He hurriedly scanned it with Truth Listener and immediately discovered the companion egg. It was beside Tyrant Behemoth's foot, but he couldn't see it with his eyes. I already have the invisibility cloak, and now I've obtained this light concealment sword. Could it be that the heavens are destined for me to become a peerless assassin? Zhou thought happily as he picked up the light concealment sword companion egg. Chapter 765. Light Concealment, Mythical Life Providence, Invisible Sword Life Soul, Invisible Sword Aura Wheel of Destiny, Light Concealment Strength, 81 Speed, 81 Constitution, 80 Essence Energy, 81 Talent Skill, Sword Beam Slash, Sword Beam Wheel, Sword Beam Rain, Dao Integration Strike Companion Form, Sword. Although he didn't know how the skills and life providence were, he knew that the light concealment sword was definitely a top-notch companion beast, just from its stats. Apart from its slightly weaker constitution, all its stats were top-notch at the mythical stage. It was even stronger than the Golden Overlord sword's stats. In-game, he tested the light concealment sword's skill. Sword Beam Slash slashed out an extremely condensed sword beam. Its single-target destructive power was extremely powerful. Sword Beam Wheel was a multi-layered sword beam attack. It was considered a small-scale attack. Sword Beam Rain was a large-scale sword beam. It covered a large area, but its attack power was much weaker than a single sword beam slash. However, if he used Slaughterer's Infinite Essence Energy Recovery with Sword Beam Rain, it would be somewhat sick. Typical Sword Beam Rain could only be used once before his essence energy was depleted. Even a mythical essence energy couldn't withstand 2 or 3 rounds of expenditure. However, Slaughterer's Infinite Essence Energy Recovery could allow the Sword Beam Rain to continue. It was like a submachine gun with infinite bullet. Zhou studied the final Dao integration strike for a while, but he temporarily failed to figure out what skill it was. It wasn't an active offensive skill, so Zhou hadn't figured out its main use. The Invisible Sword Life Providence was the invisibility ability of the light concealment sword. The Invisible Sword Aura Life Soul was rather interesting. Apart from the sword beam, the light concealment sword could also emit an invisible sword aura. Others could only see the sword beam, but not the invisible sword aura. If they only blocked the sword beam, the invisible sword aura would take advantage of it. It was truly a sinister life soul. The effects of the Wheel of Destiny with light concealment were somewhat strange. Zhou was still studying them. After using light concealment, the light concealment sword's sword beam and sword aura converged, reducing its destructive power. He was momentarily unable to figure out its true use. In short, Zhou was very satisfied with the light concealment sword. Combined with the invisibility cloak, it was the best weapon for sneak attack. In the past, Zhou wore the invisibility cloak. If he used the Golden Overlord sword, a golden sword would be exposed. Even a blind person could see it. Now that he had the light concealment sword, the possibility of being seen was much lower. The light concealment sword has the name of the three ancient swords: high-grade light concealment, middle-grade shadow support, and low-grade night discipline. Since there's a light concealment sword in the ancient sword tomb, there might also be shadow support and night discipline. If I can gather the three ancient swords and use them together in a fight, how impressive would that be? Zhou got Tyrant Behemoth to continue drawing the sword. With this ferocious beast around, there was no need for the blood-colored avatar to take action. Zhou released his luxurious mythical pets and got them to draw their sword. The outcome wasn't that great. Apart from the light concealment sword in the beginning, although some companion eggs dropped, their levels were relatively low. None of them were at the mythical stage. Apart from that, quite a number of sword primordial energy skills dropped. Most of them were at the legendary stage, with 3 at the epic stage. Zhou absorbed all the essence energy skills, so it was better than nothing. The next morning, Wang Quan left Wang Manor and prepared to head to the elderly compound to look for Zhou. However, as soon as he stepped out of the manor, he saw Xiao Si walking toward him. "Little Quan, where are you going?" Xiao Si asked in a cultured manner. "Naturally, as you wish. To a dimensional zone," Wang Quan said with a cold expression. "In that case, I'll accompany you to prevent any accidents," Xiao Si said. "There's no need. Don't say that it's all thanks to your traversing misfortune Buddha body when nothing happens," Wang Quan said with a twitch of her lips. "Don't worry. I can control my traversing misfortune Buddha body freely. I've already temporarily sealed it today. It won't affect your goddess of misfortune life providence. Furthermore, if I go with you, I can stop any serious misfortune from happening in time to prevent unnecessary casualties, especially that friend of yours," Xiao Si said. "Up to you." Wang Quan hesitated for a moment and didn't stop Xiao Si from following. She was really afraid that something would happen to Zhou because of her. Furthermore, if she brought Xiao Si along, if she could really prove that her misfortune wouldn't affect Zhou, she could let Xiao Si see the truth and give up. As she brought Xiao Si along, Wang Quan didn't go to the elderly compound again. That was where Grandma Wang recuperated. Not to mention outsiders, even members of the Wang family weren't allowed to go there for no reason. Wang Quan naturally wouldn't bring Xiao Si there. After agreeing to meet Zhou beside the Great Wall, Wang Quan quickly walked towards the meeting spot. Xiao Si followed Wang Quan mainly because he wanted to know who was affecting Wang Quan. He had already gotten the Xiao family to investigate, but due to the short period of time, they hadn't found anything. Furthermore, no one from Sunset College had come to the Wang family recently. When he was communicating with Wang Quan, Zhou knew that she would bring Xiao Si along. He wasn't surprised. Even if Wang Quan refused to bring Xiao Si along, Xiao Si would probably meet them by accident. "Brother-in-law, you're here." When Zhou arrived at the agreed location, Wang Quan immediately ran over when she saw him. However, the way she addressed him left him slightly taken aback. However, Zhou immediately understood why Wang Quan called him that and not his name. Now, the Xia family and the Bureau were still investigating the changes in Forbidden City. If they knew that Zhou had already left Forbidden City, it would naturally be a very troublesome matter. Wang Quan deliberately didn't call Zhou name because she didn't want Xiao Si to know his true identity to prevent trouble. It's already impressive to have such thoughts at such a young age. Zhou marveled inwardly. When he was Wang Quan's age, he didn't think so much. "Little Quan, is he your brother-in-law?" Wang Quan's address of Zhou left Xiao Si slightly taken aback as he asked in puzzlement. "My sister's boyfriend. What else can I call him if not brother-in-law?" Wang Quan curled her lips. Xiao Si sized up Zhou and saw that his face was wrapped in bandages and he was wearing a hat. He couldn't tell what he looked like. "Chang Rai." Xiao Si. Xiao Si took the initiative to introduce himself. He mainly wanted to know who the man in front of him was. Wang Lu was different from Wang Quan. Wang Lu could be said to be the inevitable successor of the Wang family. It was impossible for the Wang family to let her marry out of the family, much less let her goddess of luck, life, providence be buried. The Wang family would definitely select the person who could become Wang Lu's partner. Now, Wang Quan actually called Zhou Wen brother-in-law. This made Xiaoxi momentarily unable to figure out Zhou Wen's origins. Chapter 766. Wei Go. Most people call me brother. Zhou Wen extended his hand and shook Xiaoxi's hand. Xiaoxi secretly memorized the name, but he naturally wouldn't call him brother. He only waited to return and investigate Wei Ji's origins. In an office in the imperial capital's Special Inspector Bureau headquarters, Wei Go, who was drinking tea, suddenly sneezed. He rubbed his nose and muttered to himself, "Who's thinking of me? Cut it out. Brother-in-law, aren't you going to the Great Wall? Let's go quickly." Wang Quan pulled Zhou Wen towards the staircase at the entrance of the Great Wall. Zhou Wen had been searching outside the Great Wall for a long time, but he couldn't find the tiny palm symbol. However, he didn't give up and wanted to search the Great Wall. After all, dimensional creatures like undying battle souls had very rare characteristics. Such dimensional creatures might be of great use. Wang Quan was still somewhat uneasy, afraid that her goddess of misfortune would harm Zhou Wen. Xiaoxi walked at the back with a smile on his face, but he was sneering inwardly. "Do you think you'll really be safe in a place like the Great Wall? You're too naive." Zhou Wen hadn't climbed the Great Wall yesterday, and had only searched outside, so he hadn't seen undying battle souls. After climbing the Great Wall, he finally knew what kind of existence battle souls were. On top of the ancient city walls, armored soldiers wandered aimlessly, as if they had no souls. Their attire looked very ancient, and these soldiers were like virtual projections. Their bodies were transparent. Zhou Wen reached out to grab the arm of an undying battle soul, but his palm passed through the battle soul's body as though the battle soul was only an illusion and not a real creature. Zhou Wen condensed his essence energy and attempted to attack the undying battle souls, but it was useless. All sorts of essence energy skills passed through the undying battle souls' bodies, unable to affect them at all. An undying battle soul wandered over and passed through Zhou Wen and company as it continued wandering forward. These undying battle souls are really interesting. They're a little similar to Spirit Bride, but they seem a little different. Zhou Wen sized up the undying battle soul with interest. It was clearly Wang Chan's first time seeing an undying battle soul. She was clearly very curious as she reached out to grab it, but it was naturally futile. In the past, I've only heard that the immortal battle soul was very magical. Today, I've finally seen it for myself. Wang Quan was very happy. This was because the undying battle soul couldn't harm anyone. There was no need to worry that Zhou Wen would be affected by her bad luck. Xiaoxi looked at the undying battle souls with an undetectable glint in his eyes. Zhou Wen searched for the tiny palm symbol along the way, but Wang Quan only treated it as a tourist. However, the scenery of the Great Wall was just too monotonous. Apart from the wall, there were only undying battle souls. After watching for a long time, he felt a little bored. As he was walking, he suddenly saw black smoke rising in front of him. Looking in the direction where the black smoke was rising, he saw that the place where the smoke was coming from was the beacon tower. The so-called beacon tower was actually a place where signals were transmitted in ancient times. In ancient times, there were no modern signal stations, nor were there any radio equipment or satellites to transmit signals over long distances. They could only rely on this method of burning smoke to let people in the distance see the signal. Therefore, there would be a beacon tower built at regular intervals on the Great Wall to quickly transmit information. This was also the main purpose of the Great Wall. Although the Great Wall was tall and majestic, its main purpose wasn't for combat. Apart from the beacon tower's function of transmitting information, the Great Wall's greatest purpose was to block trade and information transmission. However, in modern times, the Great Wall was basically useless. After the dimensional storms, very few humans climbed the Great Wall, much less ignite a beacon. Now, smoke suddenly rose from the beacon tower on the Great Wall. It made Wang Chan's heart skip a beat as she felt that something was amiss. Smoke rose into the sky from the nearby beacon tower. From afar, it looked like a black tornado rushing into the sky. What was even stranger was that the soulless battle souls seemed to wake up all of a sudden. Their eyes glowed red as they swarmed towards the beacon tower. "Brother-in-law, something doesn't seem right. Let's leave quickly." Wang Chan pulled Zhou and wanted to leave the Great Wall. She was really afraid that something would happen. However, when they ran back to where they had come from, they didn't see the stairs that led to the Great Wall. The Great Wall had already transformed into a dimensional zone. It was impossible to jump off the city wall and leave. Although they could jump out of the city wall, the dimensional zone's power would take effect if they did so. Their bodies would be bound by a mysterious force. The further they were from the Great Wall, the greater the force. It was as though there was a powerful spring hanging on their bodies. They would eventually be pulled back to the Great Wall. Only by leaving through the stairs could they truly leave the Great Wall. No. How can there be no one? It's clearly here. Wang Chan looked around and was so anxious that she was about to cry. "It's fine. Since we can't get out, why don't we see what's on the beacon tower?" As Zhou spoke, he walked towards the beacon tower. Although Wang Chan was very worried, there was nothing she could do. All she could do was follow Zhou to the beacon tower. Xiao Si said from the side, "I've long said that only my traversing calamity Buddha body can make you carefree. No one else can." Wang Chan pretended not to hear him and quickly walked to Zhou side. Soon, the three of them ascended a nearby beacon tower. They saw a strange container emitting a large amount of black smoke, and the nearby undying battle souls were throwing themselves into the container. Zhou was somewhat surprised to discover that the reason the black smoke was produced seemed to be because of the burning of the undying battle souls. Zhou turned to look at the other nearby beacon towers, but he didn't see any smoke rising from them. Only this beacon tower had smoke rising from it. He carefully sized up the container. It was a two-eared pot. It was completely black, but it wasn't made of gold or jade. It looked more like lacquer. There were mysterious patterns and patterns engraved on the pot. Zhou couldn't understand what they meant. As more and more undying battle souls entered the pot, the patterns on the pot gradually lit up. It was as though an evil aura was circulating around the pot. The nearby undying battle souls had already entered the pot, and the black smoke stopped spewing out. The pot began to shake violently. Suddenly, something spewed out from the ear flask. Wang Chan's expression changed drastically when she saw what it was. Chapter 767. Silver-Winged Yiksha. Why is there a silver-winged yiksha on the Great Wall? Wang Chan cried out in horror. Zhou frowned as he stared at the creature that had come out of the pot. He saw that it was an evil ghost with wings on its back. Its entire body seemed to be made of silver, but its eyes shimmered with blood-red light. It looked extremely evil and strange. He was certain that it was a dimensional creature and not a companion beast. In fact, Zhou had heard of the name Silver-Winged Yiksha before. Not long after the dimensional storms, silver-winged yikshas had appeared in some coastal cities a few times. As silver-winged yikshas were very bloodthirsty, every time they appeared, they would bring a terrifying disaster to humans. There were even some places that were massacred. However, in the past 20 to 30 years, silver-winged yikshas rarely appeared. They had never appeared in a place like the imperial capital. Zhou had only heard that silver-winged yikshas were terrifying and that they might be mythical creatures, but he had never seen them before. "Brother-in-law, run!" Wang Chan pulled Zhou and ran. She knew very well how terrifying silver-winged yikshas were. This was because the Wang family had a video of the silver-winged yiksha slaughtering a small city. Not only was the silver-winged yiksha a mythical creature, but it was also extremely fast. Its physique and strength were also terrifying. Ordinary humans couldn't even see its figure before they were beheaded by the silver-winged yiksha. Now, Wang Chan regretted bringing Zhou Wen into the dimensional zone. Otherwise, she wouldn't have encountered such trouble. I told you long ago that you shouldn't have come out with others. Only I can stop you from being plagued by bad luck, Xiao Si said. At that moment, Xiao Si was very smug. Of course, the silver-winged yiksha hadn't appeared here for no reason. Although it wasn't a companion beast but a genuine dimensional creature, this didn't mean that no one could control it. In fact, the person who had released the silver-winged yiksha was Xiao Si himself. However, the silver-winged yiksha wasn't his pet. He couldn't command it either. What really worked was the pot. The pot itself was a magical item. It had the title of Devil's Pot in the South District. It was a treasure obtained from a mysterious dimensional zone in the South District and eventually landed in the hands of the Shao family. There were no real devils in the Devil's Pot, but it could seal certain types of dimensional creatures inside. The Shao family paid a hefty price to find the silver-winged yiksha and store it in the Devil's Pot. Although he couldn't control the silver-winged yiksha inside the Devil's Pot, he could selectively open or seal the Devil's Pot. In other words, after Xiao Si controlled the Devil's Pot, he had the ability to release or take back the silver-winged yiksha. Silver-winged yikshas were extremely bloodthirsty. Once they were released, they would start a massacre. Their only weakness was that they didn't differentiate between friend and foe. They would usually only choose humans and souls as their target. Although the Devil's Pot wasn't of much help when breaking through dimensional zones, it was a powerful weapon against humans. Xiao Si told Wang Chan that he could control his life providence, but in reality it was impossible. Therefore, as long as he was by her side, Wang Chan's goddess of misfortune life providence wouldn't have much effect. Xiao Si originally didn't plan on letting Wang Chan's life providence take effect. He didn't like uncertain factors and only wanted to control everything. Roar! After the silver-winged yiksha came out of the Devil's Pot, it let out a shocking roar. Silver light erupted from its body as a terrifying shockwave caused Wang Chan and Xiao Si to fall to the ground hundreds of meters away. In the next second, the silver-winged yiksha spread its wings and instantly traversed a distance of hundreds of meters. It appeared in front of Zhou Wen, who was still standing there. Its aura was extremely violent, like a devil from hell. No! Wang Chan was extremely regretful. She regretted bringing Zhou Wen out. She regretted that she shouldn't have hoped to go to school and make friends like an ordinary girl. Xiao Si pretended to fall to the ground, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. No one knows that the Devil's Pot and the silver-winged yiksha belong to our Shao family. No matter who this fellow is, no one will blame me for being killed by the silver-winged yiksha. Without him, everything will return to normal. Wang Chan will eventually join my Shao family. Just as the two of them had different thoughts, they suddenly saw Zhou Wen pull out the saber at his waist and slash at the silver-winged yiksha in front of him. Xiao Si sneered inwardly. What kind of terrifying existence is the silver-winged yiksha? It has devoured so many undying battle souls. How can a human saber match it? Brother-in-law, I'm sorry. Wang Chan shouted loudly. Her heart was filled with regret and regret. Tears rolled down the corners of her eyes as she thought sadly, I shouldn't have had such extravagant hopes. However, in the next second, Xiao Si and Wang Chan widened their eyes in shock. The silver-winged yiksha was split into two by the bamboo blade in front of Zhou Wen as it fell to the ground. No. Impossible! Xiao Si's mouth gaped open as he looked at Zhou Wen and the silver-winged yiksha corpse at his feet in disbelief. He couldn't believe that a mythical silver-winged yiksha had died just like that. Wang Chan was also stunned. There were still tears on her face, but her expression had turned extremely strange. Her sad expression hadn't completely disappeared as it was mixed with a look of shock. What did you say? Zhou picked up a silver egg-shaped object from the silver-winged Yiksha's corpse before turning to ask Wang Chan. No. Nothing. Brother-in-law. You're amazing. Is this a silver-winged Yiksha companion egg? Wang Chan smiled through her tears as she jumped up from the ground and pulled Zhou with a look of joy. I think so. However, such a weak dimensional creature probably makes a companion beast very weak. It's useless. If you like it, take it. Zhou casually threw the silver-winged Yiksha companion egg to Wang Chan. The corners of Xiao Xi's eyes twitched as he wished he could slap Zhou. That was a silver-winged Yiksha. A silver-winged Yiksha. The Xiao family had sealed the silver-winged Yiksha for so long, but they hadn't thought of a way to kill it. They never expected that the silver-winged Yiksha would be so lucky to have a companion egg drop after its death. Ignoring the fact that Zhou had killed the silver-winged Yiksha and had a companion egg drop, he had even complained that the silver-winged Yiksha was too weak. This left Xiao Xi so hateful that he nearly crushed his teeth. However, Zhou wasn't in the mood to care about Xiao Xi's expression. His figure phased away. Not good. Xiao Xi was alarmed. He had already guessed where Zhou had gone. Although the silver-winged Yiksha was very difficult to seal, there was still a chance to do so in the future. It didn't matter if it died, but if the devil's pot was taken away by Zhou, everything would be over. Xiao Xi hurriedly ordered his life soul to retrieve the devil's pot first. He was very confident in his life soul. After all, he had used his life soul to silently place the devil's pot on the beacon tower. Chapter 768. Zhou transcendent flying immortal was extremely fast as he instantly arrived at the beacon tower. The two-eared magic pot was still on the beacon tower, but it was swaying as though something had moved it before it vanished. Truth Listener could hear the sound moving and determine where the item was, but it couldn't outline its exact shape. Zhou activated the Holy Hell King Life Soul and opened the eye of the Holy Hell King. Immediately, he saw a young child running while hugging the two-eared magic pot. The child was much smaller than demonic neonate, but the sin flames on his body were very thick. The child turned his head to look at Zhou, but it left him slightly taken aback. The child's facial features were very blurry as though he had yet to mature. His figure was also very strange. He had a large stomach and head, but his limbs were very small. It was indescribably terrifying and strange. The eye of the Holy Hell King activated as a force swallowed the invisible child into the eye of the Holy Hell King. The child seemed to be made of pure sin flames as he was directly absorbed and refined. Zhou could even sense that his Holy Hell King life soul had made considerable progress as a result. If he could have more of these life souls, he might be able to successfully evolve into a perfect body. Clang! After the child was absorbed and refined, the magic pot that had vanished immediately fell. At the same time, Zhou heard a tragic cry. He saw Xiao Xi spit out a mouthful of blood as his face turned pale, as though he had suffered a fatal blow. The destruction of his life soul was naturally an extremely serious blow to Xiao Xi. He had fallen from the epic stage to the legendary stage, leaving him alarmed and furious. Zhou grabbed the devil's pot and with a flash, he returned to Wang Chan's side. He stared at Xiao Xi, who was about to escape, and said, "This is yours, right? What are you talking about? How can that crappy pot be mine?" Xiao Xi immediately shook his head. "I originally wanted to give you a chance to live. Since you don't want it, there's no need to say anything else," Zhou said as he prepared to pull out bamboo blade. "Wait, what exactly do you want?" Xiao Xi was terrified, but he still pretended to be calm. He had seen Zhou kill the silver-winged Yiksha with one strike, so he knew how terrifying Zhou strength was. As for the life soul that Xiao Xi relied on and others couldn't see, it had been directly killed by Zhou. It made him lose his composure. "Answer a few of my questions. If your answers satisfy me, I can consider letting you live," Zhou said. "Ask me what you want to know, but the magic pot has nothing to do with me," Xiaoxi said, gritting his teeth. Alright, so you were the one behind it. I thought it was me. Wang Quan also understood what had happened and glared angrily at Xiaoxi. Zhou pulled her back and looked at Xiaoxi. I don't care if it has anything to do with you. Tell me the origins of this pot and what's its use? This pot has a name in the South District. It's called the Devil's Pot. You'll know if you ask around. It can seal certain special dimensional creatures, Xiao Sitong answered as his fingers moved in his sleeve without anyone noticing. How can I control this pot? Zhou asked again. That's very simple. Xiaoxi explained how to use the Devil's Pot. That child was your life soul, right? What's his name? What's its use? Zhou asked again. He was very interested in Xiaoxi's life soul. How could a life soul have so many sinful fires? It was even more than the sinful fires in Xiaoxi's body. This was somewhat unreasonable. Kumanthong is a relatively common life soul in Chiang Rai. As long as one cultivates the Kumanthong essence energy art, they will have a Kumanthong life soul. However, their abilities will be slightly different, Xiaoxi said. Zhou eyes lit up when he heard that. He stared at Xiaoxi and asked, in that case, many people in Chiang Rai have Kumanthong life souls? It's not just Chiang Rai. Many epic experts in the nearby areas have Kumanthong life souls, Xiaoxi answered readily. One last question. Why do you want to bring Wang Quan to the Xiao family? Zhou asked Xiaoxi. Of course, we hope to obtain the Wang family's help so that our Xiao family. Before Xiaoxi could finish his sentence, Zhou bamboo blade had already been unsheathed. With a flash of the blade, Xiaoxi and Wang Quan didn't see what was happening before the bamboo blade returned to its scabbard. You said you wouldn't kill me. Xiaoxi's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly covered his neck with his hand. However, the moment his hand touched his neck, a bloody mark appeared on his normal-looking neck. Then, blood gushed out and he couldn't stop it no matter how hard he tried. I said that if your answer satisfies me, I can consider giving you a way out. Now, I'm very dissatisfied with your answer, so I refuse to give you a way out, Zhou said matter-of-factly. You. Xiaoxi opened his mouth, but his mouth was filled with blood. He couldn't say a word. He fell to the ground and twitched a few times before he stopped breathing. Zhou used the sheathed bamboo blade to pry open his palm and saw a strange token in his hand. The token was black, but it looked like the bone of some creature. There were mysterious words engraved on the token, and the necklace tied to it was made of many strange materials. It was unknown what it was. This is a Buddha plaque. Wang Quan recognized it. What's a Buddha plaque? Is it a Buddha tablet? Zhou really didn't know what a Buddha plaque was. No, the Buddha plaque is a dimensional artifact created by some epic experts in the South District using dimensional materials. Typically, it's made from the bones of some dimensional creature. Then, a companion beast is forcefully sealed in the Buddha plaque. This way, the Buddha plaque will have the power of a companion beast, but it doesn't have an owner. As long as some special methods are used, everyone can use the power of the companion beast in the Buddha plaque. This way, some mortal stage experts or even ordinary people who have never cultivated can borrow the power of a companion beast, Wang Quan said. There's actually such a magical technology? Why hasn't the Federation promoted such technology? Zhou was somewhat surprised. It allowed ordinary people to use the power of high-level companion beasts. This technology was just too powerful. A companion beast sealed in a Buddha plaque can only use a portion of its strength. Furthermore, when it's used by ordinary people, there will be many taboos. If anything goes wrong, it will even backfire on its owner. Most people wouldn't choose such a method to control companion beasts. This is similar to the Kumanthong life soul. The Kumanthong life soul is also a life soul that can be formed quickly. As long as the method is used correctly, it's very easy to condense a Kumanthong life soul. However, the method of condensing a Kumanthong life soul is very cruel. Furthermore, just like the Buddha plaque, it can easily backfire on its owner. Therefore, apart from a certain area in the South District, very few people cultivate Kumanthong. I never expected that bastard Shao Si to cultivate the Kumanthong life soul. Furthermore, it's a child. Damn it. Wang Chan kicked Shao Si's corpse hatefully. Chapter 769. Zhou Wen picked up the Buddha plaque in Shao Si's hand. After witnessing Zhou Wen's strength, Shao Si still wanted to use the Buddha plaque to deal with him. It was likely that the Buddha plaque had extraordinary powers, so Zhou Wen was rather careful. After the dimensional storms, there were too many mysterious powers in the world. Zhou Wen wouldn't arrogantly believe that he was invincible just because he had made some small achievements. If he was not careful, this small Buddhist tablet might become a talisman that would hasten his death. Zhou Wen carefully sized up the Buddha plaque for a long time, but he couldn't figure anything out. He only felt that there seemed to be an invisible evil aura lingering around it. However, this evil aura didn't affect him at all. This was because the Buddha plaque needed a special method to be used. Zhou Wen didn't know how to use it, nor did he have a way to activate the companion beast in the Buddha plaque. After fiddling with it for a while and seeing that it was useless, he put it away. He then rummaged through Shao Si's body. Apart from a few Buddha plaques, there was nothing of value. Zhou Wen put away the Buddha plaques and summoned Fire Furnace Queen to burn Shao Si's corpse to ashes. Let's go back. Zhou Wen brought Wang Chan back to the Wang family's compound and went straight to see Grandma Wang. He recounted the matter in detail, but he didn't explain too much. He only described the entire process. Grandma Wang listened very seriously. She didn't say a word while listening. After listening, she asked Zhou Wen and Wang Chan a few questions. Little Zhou, you've done well. You've helped our Wang family greatly, and you've also saved little Chan. I won't say anything unnecessary. I need to gather the core members of the Wang family to discuss countermeasures. Although the Shao family's influence isn't comparable to our Wang family's, and they are far away in the South District, their companion beasts and various skills are somewhat special. We have to be wary of them. Also, don't tell anyone about this matter. Just pretend that it never happened. Let our Wang family resolve everything, Grandma Wang said to Zhou Wen after some thought. I was the one who killed him. If there's anything you need me to do, feel free to instruct me, Zhou Wen said. Good child, since you call me Granny, I won't stand on ceremony with you. When I need you, I will think of you. You and little Chan can go back first. Do what you have to do and pretend that nothing happened, said Granny Wang. Zhou Wen and Wang Chan left the hall. Wang Chan looked at Zhou Wen happily and said, Zhou Wen, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I would have been fooled by that despicable fellow. If it wasn't for you, I would have been that despicable fellow. Now I can finally be at ease. Zhou Wen shook his head and said, Your sister has helped me a lot. In comparison, what I did was nothing. Don't take it to heart. With that, Zhou Wen turned and returned to his room. Since the Wang family already knew of the Shao family's intentions towards Wang Chan, they would naturally be on guard in the future. There was no need for Zhou Wen to continue interfering. Wang Wen's Wang Yi Shao Wang to say Wen with Si Wen. Wang humph, sister is right. This Steel Wen isn't bad, but he doesn't know how to speak at all. Wang Chan put the silver-winged Yiksha companion egg back into her pocket. She originally wanted to return it to Zhou Wen. After all, she had no way of incubating such a mythical companion egg. It was useless even if she took it. Furthermore, she wouldn't casually take something from others. If he really wanted a mythical companion egg, it wouldn't be difficult with a sister like Wang Lu around. Even so, Wang Chan changed her mind. She didn't return the companion egg to Zhou Wen. Instead, she took it back to the Wang family. Little Chan, are you all right? Wang Lu already knew what had happened. When Wang Chan returned, she pulled her and asked, I'm fine. I'm fine. Thankfully, Zhou Wen was here. Otherwise, I would have been fooled by that bastard Shao Si. Now, I finally know that my misfortune life providence doesn't necessarily bring misfortune to everyone. At the very least, Zhou isn't affected by my misfortune, Wang Chan said. Wang Lu smiled and said, "It's good that you can think that way. Your life providence is nothing." "By the way, sister, do you like that steely one?" Wang Chan asked. "How can that be? We are just classmates who have a good relationship," Wang Lu hurriedly said. "Is that so?" "Sister, you have to cherish this opportunity," Wang Chan said. "Cherish what opportunity? No one wants a man without any interest at all. It would be strange if he has a girlfriend," Wang Lu said with a twitch of her lips. "That might not be the case. I think Steely One isn't bad. If you don't want him, I'll be his girlfriend when I grow up." With that said, Wang Chan carried the companion egg back to her room. Wang Lu was taken aback. She never expected Wang Chan to say that. After Zhou Wen returned to his room, he continued grinding the ancient sword tomb. He was still thinking about the shadow-bearing sword and the Knight Immaculate sword. However, the ancient sword tomb was just too big. Most of the ancient swords were only at the mortal and legendary stage. It wasn't easy to find an epic one, much less a mythical one. After grinding for a few hours, none of the ancient swords destroyed were at the mythical stage. However, the vine sword was still there. Zhou had tried all sorts of methods to pull out the sword, but the outcome was the same. He couldn't pull it out no matter what. Zhou didn't take out the Buddha plaques to study because he was afraid that there were special settings on them. It wouldn't be good if the Xiao family found them through the clues. Placing them in the chaos space was equivalent to being in another space. All connections with the outside world were severed. No matter how powerful the Xiao family was, it was impossible for them to find the Buddha plaque. Zhou planned on taking out the Buddha plaques to study after he left the imperial capital. The only regret he had in coming to the imperial capital was that he hadn't downloaded the Great Wall dungeon. However, Zhou roughly knew that the undying battle soul was likely a soul-type creature. It wasn't that it couldn't be killed, but it required some special powers. The changes in the Forbidden City continued. Thunder and lightning continued to fall from the sky, turning the Forbidden City into a city of thunder and lightning. However, the thunder and lightning were limited to the Forbidden City and didn't have much impact on the imperial capital. Some people had already attempted to enter Forbidden City to explore the situation inside, but the outcome was terrible. Be it companion beasts or humans, they immediately lost contact after entering Forbidden City. Up to now, not a single person had walked out alive. What's the woman inside that log? What's her relationship with the antelope? Why did the antelope get me to carry her into Forbidden City? Zhou thought about this question for a long time but failed to come up with an answer. When he asked the antelope, it always looked at him with a strange expression. He couldn't tell what its expression meant. It looked like pity, regret, contempt, and even schadenfreude. In short, it left Zhou Wen's hair standing on end every time, but the antelope didn't give him an answer. Chapter 770. In the next few days, Zhou Wen went to some dimensional zones in the imperial capital, but he didn't find anything. He didn't discover the tiny palm symbol. The Wang family had already decided on the Xiao family's matter. Although they had temporarily appeased the Xiao family, it was ultimately a latent danger. The Xiao family's interest in Wang Chan probably wouldn't stop because of Xiao Xi's death. The Wang family also wanted to figure out the cause and effect of this matter. If possible, they even wanted to destroy the Xiao family to eliminate this future trouble. However, the Xiao family wasn't weak. Furthermore, they were far away in the South District. The Wang family couldn't reach there. To destroy a local wealthy family like the Xiao family, probably only the South District's ruler, the Dugu family, could easily do it. The Wang family could only first stabilize the Xiao family before slowly plotting in secret. They wanted to figure out why the Xiao family wanted Wang Chan. The matter in the imperial capital was basically over. Zhou Wen planned on returning to Luoyang. Before he left, Grandma Wang sent him off with Wang Lu and Wang Chan. She even exhorted him to visit her house often when he was free. Zhou Wen left the imperial capital and arrived at an abandoned village. He saw Anxing sitting on a tree root waiting for him. "Young Master Wen, how's old Master Xia?" Anxing had been here for so long. Although he hadn't entered the imperial capital himself, he already knew the situation in the imperial capital like the back of his hand. He had already contacted Zhou Wen, but for safety reasons, he hadn't sent out any news. He won't appear again in the future. Zhou Wen roughly recounted Xia Zhihuang's matter, shocking Anxing. Old Master Xia is Xia Zhihuang. Furthermore, his invincible connate divine art hasn't been broken. In that case, the Xia family isn't actually his bloodline? Anxing immediately had the same guess as Zhou Wen. Who knows? In theory, if the invincible connate divine art hasn't been broken, it's impossible for Xia Zhihuang to have descendants. However, his invincible connate divine art has already fused with the Great Emperor Sutra to form the Great Emperor Sutra. Perhaps he can have descendants. Now that he's dead, this secret will probably never be known by anyone, Zhou Wen said. How's Forbidden City now? Anxing asked another important question. I don't know either. You have to ask it. Zhou Wen looked at the listless antelope. Anxing clearly knew that he couldn't get an answer from the antelope, so he changed the topic. Li Xian went to the South District. Why did you suddenly go to the South District? Zhou Wen was taken aback. Li Xian had never told him about this. Did Li Mabai get him? Zhou Wen suddenly thought of something as his expression changed drastically. No, he went with Worm Dugu. Worm Dugu wanted to take him in as a disciple, but Li Xian didn't agree. In order to move Li Xian, Worm Dugu told him some secrets, so Li Xian wanted to try his luck in the South District. He was afraid that you would be anxious, so he didn't get me to tell you. Anxing recounted the situation. Zhou Wen was really worried. Li Xian looked carefree on the surface, but in fact, he was a person who was easily swayed by his emotions. This was Li Xian's weakness, but it was also his strength. Zhou Wen was really afraid that something would happen to him in the South District. One long li ti long, have one, said. Li was ti di yang li wen ti di yang li have vichen ti chen li Xian. It was too late to say anything now. Zhou Wen only hoped that Li Xian could return safely. There's a rather famous earth temple up ahead. Do you want to take a look? Anxing asked Zhou Wen when they arrived at a small town. Earth temple? It's good to take a look. Zhou Wen still remembered that he had obtained a treasure map the last time he went to the Earth Temple. However, before he could dig up any treasures, he had been given a metal walnut by a doll-like dimensional creature. Inside the metal walnut was Tai Sui. The functions of the Earth Temples in the East District were similar. If locals paid respects to the Earth Lord, they might obtain a treasure map. However, if they weren't born in this land, even if they kowtowed until their heads bled, the Earth Lord wouldn't bother with them. Anxing took Zhou Wen to the nearby Earth Temple. The Earth Temple here was indeed much bigger than the one Zhou Wen had gone to previously. Furthermore, the main god of this temple was Earth. It didn't share the temple and incense offerings with the other deities. Treasure map for sale. It's an authentic treasure map obtained by a local. It only requires one legendary companion egg. A freshly made treasure map for exchange for 2 legendary strength crystals that are measured to be above level 6. A treasure map passed down by my ancestors. It was very lively in front of the Earth Temple. It was like a market. Many stalls were selling treasure maps, and there were also people selling crystals and companion eggs. Why don't these locals dig for treasures themselves? Zhou Wen found it odd. Anxing said with a smile, Do you really believe that these people are selling treasure maps? It's been decades since the dimensional storms. The locals have long finished paying their respects. Only newborn babies have the right to pay respects to the Earth Lord for the treasure map. How many babies are born every year? Zhou immediately understood that these people who sold treasure maps were similar to those who sold antiques and Buddha statues at the temple's entrance in the past. Most people knew that they were fakes, but they still held hopes of getting lucky. Unfortunately, we aren't locals. It's useless even if we pay our respects. Otherwise, it wouldn't be bad to get a treasure map to try our luck, and Xing said. That might not be the case. Although we aren't locals, it's very possible that the Earth Lord wants to give us a treasure map because of our good character, Zhou said with a smile. Young man, you really know how to think of good things. Instead of having such unrealistic dreams, you might as well come here and buy 2 treasure maps to try your luck, said an old man who was selling treasure maps to the side with a smile. Buying a treasure map from you might as well pay respects to the Earth Lord. Zhou shook his head and was about to walk into the Earth Temple. Lad, take another look. Perhaps my treasure map is really more useful than the one from the Earth Lord? The old man didn't give up as he pulled Zhou back. Zhou expression changed slightly as he focused his gaze at the elder. His reaction was extremely fast. Even a mythical creature wouldn't be able to touch Zhou, much less an old man. The elder's seemingly casual pull had actually grabbed his arm, preventing Zhou from reacting. This was definitely abnormal. However, Zhou didn't sense anything special about the elder. The sense of danger he had honed over time didn't come into play. The more Zhou looked at the elder, the more he felt like he had seen him before. Although his looks were different, his eyes felt very familiar to Zhou. These eyes, Jing Daoxian. There's no mistake. These are Jing Daoxian's eyes. Zhou nearly cried out. Chapter 771. Zhou hair stood on end as he tried to gather his strength to escape the old man's grasp. And Xing also realized that something was amiss as he stared intently at the old man, prepared to attack at any moment. To Zhou surprise, the old man released his hand and picked up a treasure map that resembled a wooden plaque. He handed it to Zhou and said with a smile, "Young man, I'll give you this treasure map for free. Go dig around first. If you can dig up any treasures, it won't be too late to buy it from me." Zhou stared at the old man and sized him up, but apart from his eyes, there was nothing about the old man that resembled Jing Daoxian. He couldn't even sense the essence, energy fluctuations, and exuberant vitality that a cultivator should have. If the old man hadn't grabbed him, Zhou would have imagined him to be an ordinary person. "There's no need to stand on ceremony with me. Take it and dig it up. Who knows, you might be able to dig up an immortal's treasure. However, not everyone can take an immortal's treasure. If you don't have the lost immortal technique, I'm afraid you won't be able to return." The old man stuffed the treasure map into Zhou's hand. When Zhou heard that, he felt that the old man in front of him was most likely Jing Daoxian. Otherwise, why would he say the words, "lost immortal"? "Young Master One?" And Xing walked to Zhou's side, but his eyes remained vigilant as he stared at the old man squatting behind the stall. Zhou originally didn't wish to take the treasure map, but he failed to dodge it. The treasure map was stuffed into his hand as he held it. Zhou's essence energy was ready to erupt at any moment. The old man slowly packed his things and placed everything on the stall into a bag. Then, he got up and left. As he walked, he shook his head and sighed. "This world is really getting harder and harder to survive. Young Master One, do you know that old man?" And Xing couldn't help but ask when he saw that Zhou was still staring at the old man's back despite the old man walking half a street away. "I suspect that he's Jing Daoxian," Zhou said with a suppressed voice. And Xing's body trembled when he heard that. He said in disbelief, "You know Jing Daoxian? I met him once. Although he looked different back then, I think it's him." Zhou was somewhat hesitant, unsure if he should chase after him. Zhou wished to figure out what was going on with the Lost Immortal Sutra, but the person in front of him was the most legendary devil in the Federation's history. Although there were many great devils in the early days of the Federation, There were also many devils that appeared later on. For example, Jack might have killed more people than Jing Daoxian, but none of them were as legendary as Jing Daoxian. Zhou deeply knew how terrifying Jing Daoxian was. Lord Alcohol and Xia Zhihuang were shrewd old men, but they had been played by Jing Daoxian like a fiddle. Even though Zhou had some achievements, he didn't dare underestimate such a person. Previously, Zhou had secretly investigated Jing Daoxian, but the information he obtained was very limited. He only knew that Jing Daoxian had been severely injured in a dimensional zone and was almost crippled. Therefore, the Bureau had taken the opportunity to pursue Jing Daoxian. Even so, the Bureau's pursuit failed. They failed to capture Jing Daoxian, who was like a cripple. It was during that period of time that Zhou met Jing Daoxian and obtained the Lost Immortal Sutra. Gritting his teeth, Zhou got up and chased after him. Although Jing Daoxian was terrifying, escaping wasn't a solution. There were some things that only Jing Daoxian could give him. And Sheng and Zhou chased after him, but when they saw the old man turn a corner in front of them, they realized that there was no sign of the old man. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. Zhou had been using Truth Listener to monitor the old man, but he failed to discover how he had vanished. It was as though he had teleported. After searching the surroundings, he didn't find any traces of the old man. Zhou's heart stirred as he picked up the treasure map in his hand to take a look. He saw that the treasure map was a wooden plaque. In front of the wooden plaque was a simple map, and behind it was a time. It was obvious that it had just been written. From the looks of it, it really might be Jing Daoxian. "Young Master One, are you going?" And Sheng asked as he looked at the time on the treasure map. "I have some questions that only Jing Daoxian can answer." Zhou handed the treasure map to Sheng. "Help me take a look. Where is the location marked on this map?" "It's in front of the Earth Temple. If the time is converted to common time, it should be 3:30 a.m., and Sheng said after looking at it for a while. "All right, we'll come again at night," Zhou said. "Young Master One, find a place to rest first." "I'll make some preparations," and Sheng said. Zhou wasn't in the mood to head to the Earth Temple to pay his respects to the Earth Lord. He found an inn in the town and stayed there, waiting for night to arrive. And Sheng didn't return until 3 in the morning. When he returned, he said to Zhou, "There was too little time. I tried my best to make some preparations. However, if the other party is really Jing Daoxian, my preparations might not be of much use. Young master, you have to be careful." Zhou nodded and didn't say a word. Seeing that it was about time, Zhou brought Sheng to the Earth Temple. The area in front of the Earth Temple at night was naturally not as lively as it was during the day. There was basically no one there, but the elder was still setting up a stall in the same spot. The surveillance companion beasts I set up weren't effective. I didn't even notice when he entered the Earth Temple, and Sheng whispered to Zhou, "It's fine." Zhou shook his head slightly before walking towards the elder. As he walked towards the elder, Zhou activated the Slaughterer Life Soul. At the same time, he prepared to summon a half-living pet. As long as there was anything amiss, he would immediately attack with all his might. "You really came after all," the elder said to Zhou with a smile. "You've already come knocking on my door. What's the point of hiding?" Zhou said as he walked towards the elder. The elder didn't comment. All he did was size up Zhou as though he was admiring a treasure. "I originally thought that you were already dead. Even if you weren't dead, you should be a lunatic by now. However, not only are you not dead or crazy, you look like you're living very well." "Because of the Lost Immortal Sutra?" Zhou asked. This was what he wanted to figure out. He had never known the origins of the Lost Immortal Sutra. Now, he was basically certain that the elder in front of him was Jing Daoxian. "That's right." Jing Daoxian nodded and said, "Back then, I found you pleasing to the eye. I originally wanted to give you the Skyfiend solution I researched for fun, but who knew that you would dare reject me? No one in this world can reject me. Even if they do, they have to pay the price. Therefore, I gave you the Lost Immortal Sutra. In fact, before you, the Lost Immortal Sutra had already changed owners several times. Every owner either died or went mad. Even I was tortured. If not for this sutra, I wouldn't have suffered such heavy injuries in the dimensional zone. Chapter 772. Zhouwen had no intention of interrupting Jing Daoxian as he continued listening. Back then, I was heavily injured and most of my companion beasts were dead. I was also affected by the power of the Lost Immortal Sutra. If this continued, I might really go crazy from the Lost Immortal Sutra. At that time, I just so happened to meet you, and you put me in a very bad mood, so I used a method to transfer the Lost Sutra Immortal to you. Not only could I get rid of you, but I could also reduce my burden. It was killing two birds with one stone. With that said, Jing Daoxian stared at Zhouwen and asked, "What I didn't expect is that you actually mastered the Lost Immortal Sutra. The Lost Immortal Sutra has had so many owners. Not all of them are peerless elites, but they are all astounding talents. Each of them has their own strengths, but you managed to master the Lost Immortal Sutra that so many people failed to master. I really want to know how you are stronger than them, and how you are stronger than me, Jing Daoxian." If it were an ordinary 17-year-old student, they would definitely feel smug upon hearing Jing Daoxian's words. Even a devil like Jing Daoxian admitted that he was inferior to him. How glorious was that! Unfortunately, Zhouwen didn't think so. He had witnessed Lord Alcohol's death and knew that the reason Xia Zhihuang was so deranged was because of Jing Daoxian. Zhouwen suspected that Jing Daoxian had given him the Lost Immortal Sutra for the same reason. I don't find anything special about the Lost Immortal Sutra. I just cultivated it casually, Zhouwen answered ambiguously. This answer clearly didn't satisfy Jing Daoxian, but he wasn't in a hurry. He said slowly, "Why don't we make a deal? Answer one of my questions, and I'll answer one of yours. What do you think?" "I don't have any questions for you," Zhouwen said. "Don't you want to know why the world has become like this? What kind of place is the dimension? How's your teacher, Wang Mingyuan? Where did the Lost Immortal Sutra come from?" Jing Daoxian casually asked a few questions that Zhouwen wanted to know. "I'll naturally know the answers to these questions after defeating you." Zhouwen suddenly figured something out. Regardless of whether the Lost Immortal Sutra had been deliberately arranged for him by Jing Daoxian, he could at least confirm one thing. Jing Daoxian wanted to know the process or results of his cultivation of the Lost Immortal Sutra. Just like Lord Alcohol and Xia Zhihuang, Jing Daoxian might have treated him as an experimental subject. Since he was an experimental subject, regardless of whether the experiment succeeded or failed, Jing Daoxian probably wouldn't want him to die before the experiment ended. Since Jing Daoxian didn't want him to die, why should he have so many scruples? Zhouwen happened to want to know how much strength this legendary devil still had. Jing Daoxian seemed to see through Zhouwen's thoughts as he said indifferently, "Do you think you can be impudent in front of me just because I don't want to kill you?" "That's what I think." Zhouwen didn't hide his thoughts. "Haha, you're right. I really don't want to kill you now because you have made me see some interesting possibilities. Compared to killing you, I'm more willing to see the answer." Unexpectedly, Jing Daoxian admitted that he wouldn't kill Zhouwen. However, Jing Daoxian changed the topic and said coldly, "Although I won't kill you, I can lock you up and slowly study you. It's best you think carefully before taking action." "I've thought it through. Before that, I'll slice you up," Zhouwen said as he drew his saber and slashed. Transcendent Flying Immortal was unbelievably fast, but this wasn't Zhouwen's trump card. At the same time, the Great Might Vajra Bull and Behemoth appeared beside Zhouwen. One used the Soul Suppression Bell, while the other used Absolute Strength. And this was only a restraining method Zhouwen used. His true trump card was in his pupils. The torch dragon eye mirror lit up as he was about to activate bright torch vision world. We will meet again. Remember, your life belongs to me. Jing Daoxian looked at Zhou Wen strangely as he suddenly burrowed into the ground. Even the items on the ground burrowed into the ground and vanished instantly. Earth escape. Zhou Wen frowned slightly. His saber beam slashed the ground, leaving a deep ravine. However, he didn't see any traces of Jing Daoxian. Truth Listener was used to its limits, but there was no sign of Jing Daoxian. Young Master One, perhaps I can track him. During the day, I've already scattered water mixed with a special smell on the ground in a nearby area. The water has been dried, but the smell remains on the ground. Jing Daoxian's body was already stained with this smell. I can give it a try and see if I can track him, and Xing said. Then quickly give it a try. Zhou Wen was overjoyed. He suspected that Jing Daoxian hadn't fully recovered from his injuries. Perhaps this was an opportunity. And Xing summoned a strange little beast. It looked like a mouse, but it was much fatter than a mouse. It was as fat as a ball and didn't have eyes. However, its nose had many tentacles that looked like meat sprouts. Ordinary creatures can't smell that smell. Only companion beasts with an especially developed sense of smell can tell. As Xing spoke, he got the companion beast to leave the Earth Temple and search the nearby area, hoping to find the scent left behind by Jing Daoxian. However, after searching the entire town and its vicinity, he failed to find any scent. It was unknown if Jing Daoxian's Earth escape was too powerful, allowing him to escape hundreds of kilometers away, or if he hadn't been tainted by the remnant scent on the ground. As expected of the Federation's number one devil. It's no wonder he's still able to roam free despite the Federation's pursuit for so long. I've set up so many things in advance, but none of them worked. Young Master One, you have to be especially careful when being targeted by such a person, and Xing said as he looked at Zhou Wen with a heavy expression. Zhou Wen nodded. I'll be careful. Not daring to stay in the town any longer, Zhou Wen and Xing rushed back to Luoyang. They didn't stop along the way and didn't rest much. However, ever since that time, Jing Daoxian didn't appear again. The journey was very smooth. After returning to Luoyang, Xing's tense nerves relaxed a little. Young Master One, it's best you don't return to school. I'll arrange a residence for you that can prevent Earth escape from entering. Zhou Wen shook his head and said, It's impossible for me to hide forever. Besides, Jing Daoxian might not be able to touch me. After rejecting Xing's good intentions, Zhou Wen returned to school. The antelope and chick returned to the building they were used to living in, appearing very comfortable. With the antelope and chick watching the house, it wouldn't be easy for Jing Daoxian to secretly take action. After returning to school for 2 to 3 days, he didn't find any traces of Jing Daoxian. Instead, Li Mabai came to look for him again, hoping that Zhou Wen could follow him to the South District and attempt to contract a guardian. Are you sure that guardian is still around? Zhou Wen asked Li Mabai. This was because he had always suspected that the guardian Li Mabai mentioned was Xiao Youchuan's Black Jade Guardian. Chapter 773. Why do you ask? Li Mabai was a clever person. When he heard Zhou Wen's question, he immediately had some unpleasant thoughts. I heard that Dugu Go, Zhang Chuanqiu, and company discovered a guardian cocoon somewhere in the South District. Furthermore, they have successfully contracted it, Zhou Wen said half-truthfully. Li Mabai heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. I know what you're talking about. The two aren't in the same place. Up to now, no one has entered the place I discovered. It's surrounded by extremely dangerous dimensional zones. The most famous dimensional zone is called the Valley of No Return. Even the Dugu family doesn't dare venture deep into it. Back then, I only saw the guardian cocoon by chance. The chances of others seeing it are extremely low. To be honest, Zhou Wen was somewhat tempted. There were too few guardians. The two guardians he could come into contact with were too powerful. It was difficult for him to lay his hands on them. If Zhou had time to slowly develop, it would only be a matter of time before he killed them. However, now that Jing Daoxian had come knocking on his door, Zhou felt the pressure. Just as Xia Zhihuang had said, if one didn't enter the mythical stage, they were ultimately mortal. As their foundation was too poor, it was easy for them to be treated as a weakness when facing a mythical opponent. It was useless even if they had mythical companion beasts. According to the agreement, if you can't contract a guardian, the guardian will belong to me, right? Zhou said to Li Mabai. Of course. It's a pleasure working with you. Li Mabai smiled and extended his hand. Zhou extended his hand and shook Li Mabai's hand. They had reached an agreement. Such matters were useless in black and white, so there was no need to sign a contract. When can you leave? Li Mabai asked Zhou. Anytime, Zhou answered. Pack your things. We'll set off tonight. After we reach the South District, we have to make a trip to Mong Sat and find a friend with the surname Gu for help. With him leading the way, we can safely reach the Valley of No Return, Li Mabai said. Is there any trouble we can't resolve on the way? Zhou asked with a frown. Li Mabai said, the South District is very different from the other districts. The other districts are all about strength. Most of them determine victory or defeat based on strength. However, in the South District there were all sorts of small, evil dimensional creatures. There were even places where the small was king. The smaller the dimensional creature, the greater the destructive power it could cause. For example, the fairy Undying Gu on the ranking was only the size of an ant, but its destructive power wasn't weaker than any dimensional creature on the ranking. In the South District, there are many evil and microscopic dimensional creatures. If you aren't familiar with the local situation, you might not even know how you died. Although I know a little about the area, I'm not a local after all. It'll be much safer with a local leading the way. All right. Zhou nodded and asked, do you know that Li Xian went to the South District? Where he goes has nothing to do with me. Li Mabai left after saying that. Zhou went back to prepare, and told a few people close to him that he was going to the South District. At night, Zhou set off for Mong Sat with Li Mabai. Li Mabai brought 2 people with him. One of them was Butterfly, whom Zhou had seen before. The other was a mute. His name was Mute. The 2 of them took care of Li Mabai's food and lodging along the way, as though they were servants. Zhou was still wary of Li Mabai. He was careful along the way, but nothing happened. As the air route had long been severed, the road to Mong Sat wasn't easy to traverse. After the dimensional storms, it became even more difficult. Thankfully, with Mute leading the way, he was very familiar with the jungle. Along the way, he traversed mountains and ridges, relying on him to scout ahead. Only then could he avoid danger. Occasionally, he would encounter some dimensional creatures that broke out of the seal, which was easy to deal with. The current Mong Sat was like an isolated island on land. There were too few people who could reach this place. Only some of the nearby natives and people who wanted to develop in Mong Sat, like the Gu family, would continue to stay in this area of Mong Sat. On the streets of Mong Sat, there were many men and women wearing monk robes. The men's monk robes were purplish-red, while the women's clothes were pink. The locals originally believed in Buddhism. After the dimensional storms, faith became even more important. Be it the natives or foreign families, as long as they settled in Mong Sat, they would believe in Buddhism. Otherwise, it would be difficult for them to integrate into the local society. The friendly Mabai was looking for was called Gu Shanshui. Although he wasn't a monk, he believed in Buddhism. However, Zhou saw many chains on him. They didn't look like items from Mong Sat, but the Buddha plaques he had obtained from Shaoxi. Apart from the Buddha plaques, there were many tattoos on Gu Shanshui's body. The tattoos were clearly not formed by companion beasts, but man-made. Li, my friend, I'm afraid there's no way to go to the Valley of No Return, Gu Shanshui said. Master Gu, what happened? Li Mabai knew that something must have happened. Otherwise, with Gu Shanshui's personality, as long as he agreed, he would make a trip to the Valley of No Return, no matter how dangerous it was. There's only one way to go to the Valley of No Return now. However, there's a large-scale break-in at the Flower River that we have to pass through. There are already many people who want to travel between Mong Sat and Chiang Rai through the Flower River. After entering the Flower River, they disappeared without a trace. There's no lack of epic experts among them. Gu Shanshui explained the situation in detail. The Flower River wasn't a real river. Instead, after the dimensional storms, a type of flower appeared in a large area between Chiang Rai and Mong Sat. The flower grew in patches like an endless river, so it was called the Flower River by the locals. Due to the dimensional zones, the traffic between Mong Sat and Chiang Rai had basically been cut off. Only by taking the Flower River could one avoid all the dimensional zone. However, in the past half a month, there had been an anomaly at the Flower River. Many people who entered the Flower River disappeared without a trace. No one dared to enter the Flower River again. Previously, an epic expert from the Gu family had led people into the Flower River, but there was no news of them after they left. Even many of the people the Gu family had sent to the Flower River to investigate had disappeared, but they failed to find anything. Is the Flower River the only way to the Valley of No Return? Li Mabai asked after some thought. There's a section of the way that we have to pass through the Flower River. We have to walk at least 50 to 60 kilometers in the Flower River, Gu Shanshui said. Chapter 774. Zhou Wen and Li Mabai looked at each other. If they wanted to go to the Valley of No Return, they could only go through the Flower River. However, without figuring out the situation in the Flower River, the chances of death were too high if they rashly entered. Master Gu, can you take us to the Flower River to take a look? Li Mabai asked. No problem, but please forgive me. I can't take you into the Flower River. Gu Shanshui made things clear. Even if they reached the Flower River, he definitely wouldn't enter. Li Mabai had promised Gu Shanshui that he would only take them to the vicinity of the Flower River. He wanted to take a look at the Flower River's situation first. Zhou Wen also wanted to take a look at the Flower River's situation. It wasn't easy for him to come here, so he was somewhat unwilling to return. Gu Shanshui led them to the Flower River. Along the way they took a jungle path. There was no path at all. Gu Shanshui led the two youths from the Gu family ahead while Zhou Wen, Li Mabai, and company followed behind. Zhou Wen kept Truth Listener's ability activated, allowing him to hear everything around him. Furthermore, he got Tai Sui to use its mimicry ability and transform into a chick. After Tai Sui's mimicry, it looked identical to the chick, but it was white. It stood on Zhou Wen's shoulder with the chick. Zhou Wen was afraid that the antelope would cause trouble if it came out, so he didn't bring it out. He had already contacted Ensuring to get someone to send it food to prevent it from causing trouble on campus. According to Worm Dugu, the chick likely had a phoenix bloodline. It had a very good restraining effect on Gu. Tai Sui also had a strong restraining effect on microscopic dimensional creatures. This was an important reason why Zhou Wen dared to come to the South District. Put on your gas masks. Gu Shanshui stopped and took out the gas masks for Zhou Wen and company. Zhou Wen and company put on their gas mask. Gu Shanshui glanced at the two birds on Zhou Wen's shoulders and said, "Put away all the companion beasts as well." Zhou Wen placed them in his backpack and didn't take them back. Firstly, the chick wasn't a companion beast, so he couldn't take them back. Secondly, Tai Sui needed to stay outside to ensure that Zhou Wen wouldn't be invaded by microscopic companion beasts, so he naturally couldn't take them back. Gu Shanshui naturally saw this scene, but he didn't say a word. Instead, the two youths from the Gu family curled their lips as though they despised Zhou Wen's actions, but they didn't say a word. Everyone continued walking forward. Zhou Wen soon knew why Gu Shanshui wanted them to wear gas masks. There were many fungi here, and there were spores floating everywhere like fog. These fungi were originally creatures of Earth. They had mutated due to the dimensional storms. Although they hadn't reached the level of dimensional creatures, the spores they emitted would cause great damage to the human body if they entered the respiratory tract. Most importantly, it was difficult to treat them in the body. Tai Sui was naturally not afraid of these spores. It did not have much appetite for these spores. It was probably because the energy of these spores was too low, so Tai Sui was no longer interested in them. The little bird was also unafraid of these spores. Any foreign microorganisms that entered its body would be refined by the phoenix flames within its body. If not for this, the phoenix would not be the nemesis of goo insects. Zhouwen got the two of them to stay in his backpack obediently. As the group walked through the forest, their bodies were quickly covered in a layer of dust. It was actually a large number of spores. On the ground and on the withered trees, all sorts of fungi could be seen. Many of the trees here had already withered, becoming a paradise for fungi. Thankfully, the spores here were somewhat different from the parasitic spores in Dragon Gate Grotto. The parasitic spores were independent dimensional creatures, and these spores were only a part of the fungus parent body. Even so, if an unprepared person entered this area and inhaled a large number of spores, their lungs and respiratory system would probably be finished. Suddenly, Zhouwen realized that there was a corpse on the ground in front of him. From the looks of it, he wasn't a native of Mong Sa. His corpse had already rotted, and there was a strange fungus growing on it. They looked like egg-sized jellyfish growing on the corpse. They were transparent and colorless. Although the mushrooms looked beautiful, they made one's hair stand on end when they grew on the corpse. "Don't move. Gu Lu, go take a look," Gu Shanshui said to a young man. The young man responded and summoned a palm-sized black scorpion companion beast. He made it slowly approach the corpse and crawl onto it, arriving beside a jellyfish-like mushroom. Gu Lu looked at Gu Shanshui. Gu Shanshui nodded slightly before ordering the black scorpion to stab the jellyfish-like mushroom with its tail. Bam! After the mushroom was stabbed, it exploded like a water ball. However, what burst out wasn't water, but countless transparent spores. Retreat! Gu Shanshui grabbed Gu Lu and another young man named Gu He and threw them behind. He took a step forward and spat out a mouthful of flames at the spores. When the flames encountered the spores, it rose like they had encountered gasoline. They instantly burned most of the spores, but a few spores still spread out. Gu Lu and Gu He also used fire elemental companion beasts to burn the spores that had escaped. However, the black scorpion companion beast from before had already been invaded by the spores. It ignored Gu Lu's orders and crazily crawled towards the other jellyfish mushrooms, hoping to destroy them. Gu Shanshui spewed out flames from his mouth and burned the corpse along with the scorpion companion beast to death. The jellyfish mushrooms exploded in the fire, and all the spores were immediately burned by the flames. After confirming that no one had escaped, Gu Shanshui said to Li Mabai with a heavy expression, "Li, something's amiss. That person clearly died from being infected with the spores of a fungal dimensional creature. There must be a fungal dimensional creature mother nearby. Furthermore, it's not a low-level one. It's at least at the epic stage. This has never been discovered before. Are you still going to Flower River?" Li Mabai looked at Zhouwen and asked, "What do you think? Let's continue." Zhouwen had been observing the jellyfish mushrooms and spores on the corpse. These things didn't pose much of a threat to him. Even if Tai Sui didn't take action, he could deal with it himself. There was naturally no need to retreat. "Master Gu, please continue leading the way. If you feel that you can't continue, please tell me in advance," Li Mabai said to Gu Shanshui. "All right." Master Gu didn't waste his breath and continued leading the way with Gu Lu and Gu He. The most common method they used was a fire elemental companion beast. However, this fire elemental companion beast was very strange. The flames it spewed out were a bluish-white color. They were very effective against fungi and poisonous insects. Wait! After walking a distance, Zhou suddenly said. This was because he had already discovered with Truth Listener that there were many corpses ahead. Every corpse was covered in jellyfish mushrooms. Chapter 775. Zhou, what did you discover? The people in front stopped as Li Mabai looked at Zhou. There seems to be something wrong ahead, Zhou said as he pointed ahead. Gu Shanshui stared ahead, but he didn't seem to see anything. However, he quickly summoned a companion beast. The companion beast transformed into a mirror and appeared in his left eye, making his left eye look like it was completely occupied by his pupil. Gu Shanshui used his left eye to look ahead again before saying, "There's indeed a problem ahead. Stay here for now. I'll go take a look." As Gu Shanshui spoke, he dived forward. Not long after, Gu Shanshui snuck back and said to Li Mabai, "Zhou is right. There's indeed something wrong ahead. There are many corpses covered in jellyfish fungi. There are just too many of them. We can't deal with them." Butterfly said, "We also have fire elemental companion beasts. We can help you clean them up." Gu Shanshui shook his head and said, "Don't use fire elemental companion beasts here. Otherwise, there might be huge trouble. Although the fire elemental companion beasts we use aren't of a high level, their fire attributes are very special. It's called corpse fire. It's a type of fire that's best at restraining the parasitic fungi on rotting corpses." "Master Gu, is there any other solution?" Li Mabai asked. "We can only take a detour. If we take a detour, we'll have to walk another 30 to 40 kilometers. Furthermore, we might have to pass through a dimensional zone named Spirit Absorption Valley. Our speed won't be too fast. We'll have to walk for at least 10 more hours than expected. Furthermore, Spirit Absorption Valley is a little dangerous. If we're unlucky, we can only retreat," Gu Shanshui said after some calculations. "Is there no other way? Spirit Absorption Valley is too dangerous. Furthermore, we might not be able to pass." Li Mabai had also heard of Spirit Absorption Valley's reputation and didn't wish to go there. "If we don't take a detour, we can only clear the jellyfish fungi. However, we can only slowly deal with them from the outside. It will probably take 2 days to clear all the jellyfish fungi on the way. Furthermore, we don't know if there are any more behind," Gu Shanshui said. Li Mabai thought for a moment and said, "Then let's clear the jellyfish fungi. It's best we don't go to Spirit Absorption Valley. I have a fire elemental pet here. Master Gu, see if you can help me." Zhou released the chick from his backpack. After Tai Sui advanced to the mythical stage, it didn't seem to have much of an appetite for ordinary microorganisms. As for these jellyfish fungi, they were only grown from the spores emitted from the mother's body, not dimensional creatures. Tai Sui was even less interested. Tai Sui, mythical, evolvable, life providence, offending the Tai Sui life soul, 12 Tai Sui God's Wheel of Fortune, long-lived. Strength, 81 Speed, 81 Constitution, 81 Essence Energy, 81 Innate Skill, Earth Escape Companion Form, Mimicry. Zhou had tried Tai Sui's Wheel of Destiny, but he didn't discover any special effects. It was useless when he used it. Tai Sui's body didn't change at all, leaving Zhou depressed. Didn't Master Gu already say that ordinary fire-type creatures can't be used here? Didn't you hear? Gu Lu said unhappily. Zhou hadn't listened to Gu Shanshui and put away the chick and Tai Sui. From the looks of it, he didn't trust them. This made Gu Lu have a very bad impression of Zhou. Now that Zhou had taken out a fire elemental pet, Gu Lu naturally felt even more disgusted. However, Gu Shanshui didn't think the same as Gu Lu. Zhou's ability to discover the jellyfish fungi ahead of time made him feel that this young man wasn't simple. Furthermore, people like Li Mabai seemed to respect Zhou, making Gu Shanshui even more afraid of underestimating him. Gu Shanshui stopped Gu Lu and asked the chick, "Is this pet's flame of yours in fire?" I'm not too sure about that, but its flames can be released and retracted freely. It should be of some use, Zhou said. What's the use of being able to retract and release it freely? Who can't retract and release their companion beast powers freely? Do you have any common sense? There are a lot of spores here. When gathered together, it's like a large number of fans. Using ordinary flames can easily trigger a dust explosion. Even without the dust explosion, igniting a large area of spores can also trigger a forest fire. It's very easy to alarm the dimensional creatures in the forest. Gu Lu said. Gu Lu, don't be rude to guests, Gu Shanshui said with a frown. When Gu Lu heard Gu Shanshui's words, he had no choice but to shut up. However, from his expression, it was obvious that he was indignant. Gu Shanshui bowed at Zhou and said, Zhou, Gu Lu is young and immature. Please don't take his rude words to heart. However, what he said is right. Ordinary flames will indeed cause many problems. If you are confident, you can let your pet give it a try. If you aren't confident, let us be in charge of cleaning up. It doesn't matter if we spend more time. Master Gu, I know a little about the taboos of using flames. Didn't I just say that my pet can control its flames without triggering an explosion or fire? Zhou had seen the chick's flames before, so he naturally knew that it had such an ability. Then let's give it a try. Let it spew out some flames first, Gu Shanshui said. Zhou gestured for the chick to spit out flames, but the chick's personality wasn't as good as Zhou's. Its intelligence wasn't inferior to humans. Although it couldn't speak human language, it could understand. Gu Lu's words made it very unhappy. Just as Zhou gestured, the chick flapped its wings and had no intention of spitting out flames for Gu Shanshui to verify. It flew straight to the corpses and spat out a blob of golden flames. No good. Gu Shanshui, Gu Lu, and Gu He were alarmed. There were nearly 100 corpses there, and there were countless jellyfish fungi of all sizes growing on them. When they were burned by the flames, a large number of jellyfish fungi exploded. Even if they didn't produce dust explosions, a large number of spores would spread out. However, the next scene left them stunned. The chick's golden flames landed on the corpses, igniting the corpses and jellyfish fungi. Strangely, the jellyfish fungi didn't explode when they encountered the flames. They quickly burned to ashes in the golden flames. Nearly 100 corpses, along with the jellyfish fungi on them, were instantly reduced to ashes. Nothing was left behind. Furthermore, the golden flames only burned the corpses and jellyfish fungi. They didn't affect the nearby creatures at all. Even the other spores in the air weren't ignited. Gu Lu and Gu He were dumbfounded. Even the corpse fire they used didn't have such good effects, much less eliminate all the jellyfish fungi and corpses so quickly. Gu Shanshui stared at the chick as his expression turned extremely odd. After watching for a while, he suddenly turned to Zhou and bowed. Mr. Zhou, if I'm willing to send you through the Flower River and into the Valley of No Return, can you do me a favor? Gu Lu and Gu He were alarmed. Outsiders didn't know what Gu Shanshui's etiquette meant, but they knew very well that this etiquette was a very high standard in Mong Sa. Typically, such etiquette was only used on monks with great merit. Chapter 776. Li Mabai and company also looked at Gu Shanshui in puzzlement, unsure why he had suddenly changed his mind and was willing to take the risk to help them cross the Flower River. I wonder how I can help you, Master Gu? Zhou didn't agree easily. Gu Shanshui had clearly seen something from the chick. Gu Shanshui said, to be honest, our Gu family is also good at nurturing and taming Gu. I discovered a mythical dimensional creature somewhere and wanted to tame it into a Gu, but because it was too powerful, I never succeeded. If Mr. Zhou is willing to lend me a hand, I'm sure you can subdue it. As Gu Shanshui spoke, he glanced at the chick. Clearly, the person he was really seeking help from was the chick. If it's within our abilities, we should help each other, but we're in a hurry to get to the Valley of No Return, I'm afraid, before Zhou could finish, Gu Shanshui said, "Mr. Zhou, don't worry. I'll help you head to the Valley of No Return first. It won't be too late for you to help me after we return from the Valley of No Return." "Master Gu, I have to ask first. What kind of mythical dimensional creature do you want to tame? What kind of abilities does it have? What do you want me to do?" Zhou asked seriously. Zhou wasn't willing to break the contract, so he had to clarify things first. "Mr. Zhou, can I have a word with you?" Gu Shanshui clearly didn't want others to know about the dimensional creature. After Zhou and Gu Shanshui went to the side, Gu Shanshui said, "The dimensional creature I want to tame is a corpse silkworm. It's in an extreme dimensional zone. To ordinary people, it's extremely dangerous. However, Mr. Zhou, you have the Phoenix Divine Bird, so subduing the corpse silkworm won't be difficult. I can only promise to help, but when the time comes, I can only do my best. I can't guarantee that I will succeed." After all, Zhou had never seen a corpse silkworm before, nor did he know what its abilities were. Therefore, he was very conservative. "That's good." Gu Shanshui was very open-minded. After the two of them finished their discussion, they walked back and set off again. Gu Shanshui continued leading Gu Lu and Gu He. On the way, they discovered corpses with jellyfish fungi growing on them. Gu Shanshui's expression turned solemn. On the way, Gu Lu and Gu He would secretly size up the chick from time to time. Even Li Mabai and company took a few more glances at the chick. Clearly, they knew that Gu Shanshui's previous actions were definitely related to the chick. The chick stood on Zhou shoulder and looked around smugly. Zhou kept using Truth Listener to observe his surroundings, hoping to find the jellyfish's parent body. However, he didn't find it. All he saw were the corpses that had been parasitized. Suddenly, Tai Sui came out of the backpack, flapped its wings, and flew toward the forest next to it. Tai Sui, Li Mabai and Tai Bai looked at him. Mabai and Wen looked at him. "It's fine. My companion beast has been in my backpack for too long. I want to go out for a spin," Zhou said perfunctorily. He didn't want to be perfunctory, but he didn't know what Tai Sui wanted to do, so he couldn't explain it clearly. Zhou kept using Truth Listener to observe the direction Tai Sui had flown in, but there was nothing there. Tai Sui flew out nearly 1,000 meters and dived towards the ground before burrowing into the ground and disappearing. Zhou couldn't hear where it had gone, but after a while, he saw Tai Sui burrow out of the ground and quickly fly back. However, its stomach was clearly bulging. It was unknown what it had eaten. This only took a moment. Seeing Zhou's companion beast return, everyone continued on their way. Although they encountered some corpses along the way, they didn't find any jellyfish fungi on them. When Zhou saw this situation, he roughly guessed that Tai Sui had burrowed underground and eaten the jellyfish fungi's parent body. Zhou felt somewhat regretful. He hadn't even seen what the parent body looked like before it was eaten by Tai Sui. Apart from the jellyfish fungi's interference, everyone advanced much faster. Zhou had also widened his horizons. Many of the strange creatures here were things he had never seen or even heard of before. Thankfully, with Gu Shanshui and company leading the way, they avoided dimensional zones. Otherwise, if they fell into one, it was unknown how many terrifying unknown creatures they would encounter. Zhou saw a sea of flowers from afar. They had white petals and red stamens. From afar, it looked like a blood-colored white river. "That's the flower river," Gu Shanshui said as he pointed at the meandering flowers in the distance. Everyone's eyes were already focused on the flower river. Zhou was also using Truth Listener to search the flower river, but apart from the flowers, there were no living creatures. The locals called these flowers the flower of life. Wherever the flower of life appeared, there was no room for other creatures to survive. Even weeds wouldn't grow there. In the past, it was very safe for humans to enter the flower river. This was because there were no other creatures in the flower river, much less dimensional creatures. Therefore, the Flower River became an important path between nearby cities. However, ever since half a month ago, no one who entered the Flower River had come out alive. All of them had disappeared, and this path was severed. Zhou carefully sized up the flowers of life. The flowers weren't big and looked somewhat similar to peach blossoms. They were beautiful. These flowers of life don't look like dimensional creatures, Li Mabai said as he sized up the distant flowers of life. Gu Shanshui nodded and said, the flowers of life existed before the dimensional storms. They were poisonous flowers. After the dimensional storms, the poisonous flowers mutated. Furthermore, their numbers increased, forming a flower river. However, for some reason, the mutated flowers of life didn't have any poison. Many people have experimented with the flowers of life. They no longer contain any poison. Even if they were eaten, it wouldn't cause any harm to humans. However, things might be different now. Everyone, please wait a moment. I need to do some experiments first. Zhou and company stopped and waited for Gu Shanshui's experiment. As no one knew what the danger in the flower river was, they could only analyze it from the flowers of life itself. Unlike the experiment Zhou had imagined, Gu Shanshui opened a bamboo tube and released a worm that looked like a silkworm. It was fair and plump. The worm crawled towards the flower river and first ate the leaves and roots of the flowers of life before eating the flowers. It didn't seem to be a problem. This is a white silkworm. It's very sensitive to poison. If it absorbs poison, its body will show different colors, Gu Shanshui explained. Now that the white silkworm hasn't changed color, does it mean that the flowers of life still aren't poisonous? Butterfly asked curiously. Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly saw the white silkworm's body straighten up and fall from the flower. It died stiffly, but its body was still white and there was no change. Chapter 777. Master Gu, what's the situation now? Li Mabai asked Gu Shanshui. Gu Shanshui didn't answer. All he did was summon a butterfly companion beast and bring back the white silkworm's corpse. Then, Gu Shanshui cut off a portion of the white silkworm's corpse and fed it to another spider. After the spider ate the white silkworm's corpse, it didn't react. Gu Shanshui picked out a strange Buddha plaque from his Buddha plaque. The outside of the Buddha plaque looked like a transparent glass bottle. Inside was yellow liquid, and inside the liquid was a baby-like statue. Gu Shanshui opened the glass bottle outside and poured some yellow liquid onto the remaining white silkworm's corpse. When the liquid touched the white silkworm's corpse, it immediately seeped in. Gu Shanshui held the Buddha plaque and chanted softly. At the same time, he injected his essence energy into the Buddha plaque. However, after a while, there was no movement from the white silkworm's corpse. Gu Shanshui put away the Buddha plaque and looked at the spider that had eaten a portion of the white silkworm's corpse. He said with a heavy expression, "There's no poison in the white silkworm's corpse. It didn't die from poison. I used spirit control to condense the remnant spiritual consciousness on the white silkworm, but I failed." When Li Mabai heard this, he understood what Gu Shanshui meant. In other words, the flower of life itself isn't poisonous. Did the white silkworm die because it lost its soul? That's roughly what I mean. However, spiritual consciousness isn't completely equivalent to a soul, Gu Shanshui said. Can you find out what sucked the white silkworm's spiritual consciousness? Li Mabai asked. I didn't discover any other creatures involved. The greatest possibility is that the flower of life sucked away its spiritual consciousness. However, this is only a deduction, Gu Shanshui said. This deduction made Li Mabai and Zhou Wen's hearts sink. If it was really the flower of life causing trouble, it would be very dangerous for them to cross the flower river. If they weren't careful, their spiritual consciousness might be sucked away. This seems to be somewhat similar to the spirit-absorbing valley's spirit-absorbing worms. Could they be related? Li Mabai asked. I'm not sure for now. I need further research. Gu Shanshui summoned many avian companion beasts, and got them to fly across the flower river in the sky before flying into the distance. The companion beasts flew a few rounds over the flower river without any problems. This made Zhou Wen and company feel better. If they could fly across the flower river, it would save them a lot of trouble. After unsummoning his companion beasts, Gu Shanshui got Gu Lu and Gu He to open the bamboo cages on their backs. There was a beehive in the bamboo cages with many poisonous bees entering and exiting. Zhou Wen sized up the beehive curiously. He hadn't noticed it before, so he never expected Gu Lu and Gu He to be carrying such an item. The wasps inside were clearly not companion beasts, nor could they be considered dimensional creatures. They were likely mutated species of Earth's wasp. Driven by Gu Lu and Gu He, those poisonous bees flew out of the hive and into the sky above the flower river. As a result, not long after, the poisonous bees fell from the sky, as if they were drunk, and fell into the flowers. None of the poisonous bees were spared, all of them fell into the flowering shrubs. Everyone's hearts were shrouded in a shadow. The companion beasts were fine, but the wasps were all dead. They would probably end up like the wasps if they entered. Gu Shanshui did some more experiment. There were many strange things on him, dazzling him. After Gu Shanshui stopped, Li Mabai asked, "Master Gu, is there any way to cross the flower river?" "There's a way, but it can only prevent one's spiritual consciousness from being sucked away. I don't know if there are any other dangers inside," Gu Shanshui said after some thought. "We've already come this far. There's no reason to return," Li Mabai said. Gu Shanshui nodded and took out a few Buddha plaques from his pocket and handed them to Zhou Wen. "Hang these Buddha plaques around your neck. They can naturally protect you from having your spiritual consciousness sucked away. However, there are a few taboos that you need to abide by. First, don't take them off after wearing them. I'll help you take them off after we leave. Second, you need to drip a drop of blood on the Buddha plaque every day. Third, you can't eat meat. These 3 rules have to be followed, or there will be trouble." After Li Mabai took the Buddha plaque, he wore it around his neck. Then, he pricked his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. Strangely enough, the drop of blood immediately seeped into the Buddha plaque. "What companion beast is sealed in this Buddha plaque?" Zhou Wen asked curiously as he held the Buddha plaque. This Buddha plaque was very similar to the one Gu Shanshui had used. It was divided into 3 layers. The first layer was a transparent crystal, the second layer was a yellow liquid, and the innermost layer was a black baby statue. The Buddha plaque that seals companion beasts is now called a righteous Buddha plaque. I made this myself. What's sealed inside isn't a companion beast, but a Gu. Although it's a little odd, there won't be any problems as long as you abide by the rules. Remember, you have to abide by the rules. Otherwise there will be a huge disaster, Gu Shanshui warned them again and again. Li Mabai said, "Master Gu's family used to rear Gu. Later, the Gu family moved to the vicinity of Chiang Rai and learned the local technique. They have a deep understanding of Buddha plaques and Kuman Thong. Now they have formed their own school. Even in Chiang Rai, there aren't many people who can compare to Master Gu." Zhou Wen followed Gu Shanshui's instructions and fed the Buddha plaque a drop of blood before hanging it around his neck. Everyone hung up the Buddha plaques and entered the flower river under Gu Shanshui's lead. Just as Gu Shanshui had said, after hanging the Buddha plaque, they didn't have their spiritual consciousnesses absorbed. The group traversed the flower river, and all they could see was a sea of flowers. There were no other creatures. Although it looked beautiful, it also gave off a lonely feeling. Zhou Wen originally wanted Gu Shanshui to help him see what the Buddha plaques he had obtained from Shaoxi were for, but after some thought, he decided against it. This place wasn't far from Chiang Rai. If the Shao family knew that Shaoxi's Buddha plaque had landed in his hands, it would inevitably cause trouble. The sky gradually darkened as the moon rose into the sky. Under the moonlight, the flower river seemed to be covered in a mysterious veil. It looked beautiful and terrifying. Gulu suddenly screamed and fell into the flowers. His eyes rolled back as his body convulsed violently. White foam seeped out of his mouth, as though he was having an epileptic fit. Everyone was alarmed. Gu Shanshui reacted the fastest. He pinched Gulu's mouth and forced it open. Then, he took out a small bottle and poured it into Gulu's mouth. Zhou originally imagined that the bottle was filled with medicine, but to his surprise, he saw a centipede-like worm crawl out of the bottle and enter Gulu's mouth. Chapter 778. Gulu's abdomen swelled up, and he suddenly turned over and lay on the ground to vomit. When Zhou saw Gulu vomit a lot of white things, he took a careful look and nearly vomited as well. Gulu had vomited many maggots that were squirming on the ground. Gulu vomited more and more worms. The others felt their scalps go numb. They were worried that they would end up like Gulu. After vomiting for a while, Gulu also vomited out the centipede-like bug. His swollen abdomen had also subsided. He looked much better, but his face was frighteningly pale. "Master Gu, what's wrong with Gulu?" Li Mabai asked. Just now, they had already paid attention to their surroundings and did not find any problems. Gulu's sudden accident made them very uneasy. "Don't worry, it's not a problem with the flower of life. Someone planted a parasite in his body, and I've already killed him." Gu Shanshui extended his hand and beckoned. The centipede-like bug flew into his hand and something dropped from its claws. It was a worm the size of a grain of rice. It really looked like a grain of rice. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell that it was actually a worm. This is a rather common rice goo. Although it is only at the legendary level, it is easily eaten by the opponent if it is mixed in the rice grains. After it enters the body, it uses the internal force of rapid reproduction to destroy the body from the inside. It is very difficult for outsiders to understand. Gu Shanshui paused for a moment before continuing. The rice goo isn't fast, and its offensive strength isn't very strong. It's very difficult for it to enter the body directly. Before we came, the rice goo had already mixed into the bamboo bucket of rice that Gulu brought. That's why the rice goo invaded his body after he ate it. With that said, Gu Shanshui got Gulu and Gu He to check the things they had brought. Indeed, they found some rice goo in their bamboo buckets of rice. They also found a goo thinner than a strand of hair in the kettle. Gu Shanshui told them that it was also a legendary goo named bone drilling worm. It could easily kill a person if it invaded their body. It would burrow into the bone cavity and reproduce in large numbers, gnawing at the bones until there were none left. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. The few of them hadn't eaten the bamboo bucket of rice, nor had they drunk any water. Now they didn't feel like eating or drinking. The few of them handed their things to Gu Shanshui for inspection. Thankfully, there were no problems with their food and water. From the looks of it, someone did this before we set off. "Master Gu, do you know who did it?" Li Mabai asked. Gu Shanshui shook his head and said, "Our Gu family probably wouldn't do such a thing because they know that these Gu can't deal with me." Li Mabai fell into deep thought. If they weren't from the Gu family, it was possible that they weren't targeting Gu Shanshui and company. The scope was too wide, making it difficult to guess. "Master Gu, is there any way to guard against these parasites?" Butterfly asked. After all, she was a woman. When she saw the scene of Gulu vomiting maggots, she was disgusted. If she had to vomit again, she would rather die. There are countless Gu worms in the southern district. It's easy to defend against one or a few, but to defend against all of them, one can only rely on one's experience and judgment. However, if you have a legendary divine item that can restrain all Gu, no Gu will dare approach you. As Gu Shanshui spoke, he glanced at the chick on Zhou Wen's shoulder. "What divine item is that?" Butterfly asked. "The most famous one is the mythical ice silkworm Gu. If you have an ice silkworm Gu, basically no Gu will dare approach you. Even if they dare to approach, they will be discovered by the ice silkworm Gu and killed. Most mythical Gu have similar effect. The prerequisite is that you can tame it, Gu Shanshui said. Can't you just kill it and have a companion beast drop? Butterfly asked. Some can, some can't, Gu Shanshui said ambiguously. Why? Butterfly asked in puzzlement. Because living Gu have experienced many battles. They have very strong instincts, experience, and a certain level of intelligence. They also have territorial awareness. However, companion beasts might not have high intelligence. Without combat experience and territorial awareness, most of them need their owners to control them before they can unleash their might. They will be much weaker in terms of taking precautions in advance. Furthermore, mythical Gu might not drop companion beasts. The chances of them being domesticated are higher, Gu Shanshui said. Master Gu, do you have any mythical Gu on you? Release them and let us broaden our horizons, Butterfly said. If I had one, I wouldn't have needed to ask Mr. Zhou to help me capture the corpse bug. There are many people who rear Gu in the South District, but very few have mythical Gu. Furthermore, most of them should be in the Dugu family. Gu Shanshui seemed to be in a good mood as he continued. If Mr. Zhou can help me capture the corpse bug this time, I will have a mythical Gu. In the future, the Gu family will be considered one of the top figures in the South District. Gu Shanshui checked everyone's belongings and didn't find any more Gu before continuing on their way. The flower river under the moon was so beautiful that it left one's heart palpitating. A breeze blew past, causing the flowers to sway like ripples in the river. Gu Shanshui sniffed hard and suddenly stopped. Furthermore, he gestured for them to stop before looking at the distant flower river. Zhou and company stopped and traced his gaze. They saw a sea of flowers in front of them, but they didn't discover anything. But the wind was getting stronger and stronger. Not long after, they saw some lights dancing on the flower river in the distance. Zhou Wen's truth listener ability was extremely powerful, so he quickly saw what it was. It wasn't a light at all, but a crystal-like butterfly. The butterfly's entire body was transparent, and there were many patterns on the inside of its wings. The patterns suffused an ice-blue cold light, making it look even more dazzling. When the ice-blue butterfly flapped its wings, it stirred up a strong wind that stirred up ripples on the flower river. That's another butterfly. When Gu Lu saw that it was a butterfly, his pale face instantly paled. Beside him, Gu He wasn't any better. His expression was extremely ugly. It's no wonder no one who enters the flower river can leave alive. There's actually another butterfly here, Gu Shanshui said with a heavy expression. Although Zhou Wen didn't know what another butterfly was, he could tell from the essence energy fluctuations on its body that it was definitely a mythical dimensional creature. The legendary Nether Envoy, the Nether Butterfly that guides souls into the underworld? Li Mabai had clearly heard of the Nether Butterfly's name as he stared at the butterfly and said with a frown. Gu Shanshui whispered, I've only heard of people encountering Nether Butterflies in the past, but that was in a mysterious dimensional zone that humans are almost unable to reach. I never expected there to be a Nether Butterfly in the Flower River. Our luck sure isn't good. Chapter 779. The Nether Butterfly flew over as large swaths of the flowers of life emitted specks of light that gathered towards the Nether Butterfly. Soon, the entire flower river seemed to turn into a fluorescent river. Fluorescence rose everywhere. Zhou Wen and company were already retreating, but their bodies were the same as the flowers of life. They emitted specks of light, and every speck of light emitted from their bodies made everyone feel a lot less spirited. They felt exhausted and wanted to fall to the ground to sleep. They wanted to stop the radiance from their bodies, but it was useless. Quick, let's go. We can't stop. If we stop, only death awaits us. Gu Shanshui led the way as he ran through the flower river. Some of the Buddha plaques on his body shimmered with a strange light, causing the radiance on his body to slow down significantly. However, it was only slow. It couldn't stop the radiance from spreading out. Bam! The Buddha plaques on Zhou Wen and company exploded as the yellow liquid inside splattered out. The baby statue shattered as well, turning into specks of light that scattered. Many of the Buddha plaques on Gu Shanshui's body exploded. Zhou Wen summoned the Golden Overlord's sword and slashed at the nether butterfly. The nether butterfly flew extremely fast. Even if Zhou Wen could escape, the others definitely couldn't. However, when the golden sword aura slashed at the nether butterfly, it passed through its transparent body without causing any damage. The nether butterfly is a creature of the netherworld. It can shuttle between reality and the netherworld. Ordinary essence energy attacks are useless against it. As Li Mabai spoke, he summoned a companion beast. The companion beast was a white-robed girl holding a black paper umbrella. However, the white-robed girl's face didn't have any facial features, making her look very strange. However, the moment the girl appeared, the black paper umbrella opened and blocked Li Mabai's head. Li Mabai immediately stopped emitting light. Unfortunately, the black paper umbrella was too small. It could only stand 2 people at most. It couldn't envelop everyone. Zhou Wen, try and see if you can kill the nether butterfly, Li Mabai said as he ordered the white-robed girl to hold the black umbrella and float towards Zhou Wen. The white-robed girl floated to Zhou Wen's side like a ghost and used the black paper umbrella to cover his head, preventing him from emitting light. Zhou Wen immediately felt much better and no longer felt exhausted. Without any hesitation, Zhou Wen turned around and charged at the nether butterfly with the Golden Overlord sword in hand. Wait! Gu Shanshui stopped Zhou Wen and extended his hand. A golden child appeared in front of him. The golden child was somewhat similar to Shao Xi's Kumanthong, but it didn't have such a terrifying evil aura. With my life soul, your sword will be able to touch the nether butterfly. You don't have much time. My life soul can only last for 10 minutes at most. As Gu Shanshui spoke, pure metal transformed into a golden beam of light that fused with the Golden Overlord sword, causing it to have a golden image that resembled a baby or Buddha. The golden light on the sword intensified. Zhou Wen took a step forward and activated Transcendent Flying Immortal. The Golden Overlord sword in his hand slashed out a golden sword beam that instantly arrived in front of Nether Butterfly. Strangely enough, the white-dressed girl with the black umbrella seemed to be glued to Zhou Wen. No matter how fast he was, she remained by his side, using the black paper umbrella to cover his head. The Nether Butterfly seemed to sense the abnormality of the strike. With a flap of its wings, its body seemed to penetrate the netherworld and vanish. When it appeared again, it was already on the other side of the Flower River. The Golden Overlord sword in Zhou Wen's hand slashed out sword beams one after another, crisscrossing in the air like golden lightning. However, the Nether Butterfly's figure flickered, disappearing one moment and appearing elsewhere the next. Zhou Wen's sword failed to hit its body. With the black paper umbrella protecting him, Zhou Wen didn't feel much, but Li Mabai and company were already extremely exhausted. They had no strength to escape and fell to the ground one by one. The weaker Gu Lu and Gu He looked like they were about to fall asleep. Even so, Li Mabai didn't retract his companion beast. Gu Shanshui didn't retract his life soul either. He continued augmenting Zhou Wen. After failing to hit its target, Zhou Wen knew that he probably couldn't kill the Nether Butterfly with speed alone. He immediately switched his essence energy art and the Holy Hell King life soul appeared. The eye of the Holy Hell King opened at his glabella. Zhou Wen originally wanted to give it a try to see if the eye of the Holy Hell King could allow him to see the Nether Butterfly passing through the underworld. However, to his surprise, the moment the eye of the Holy Hell King opened, the glow emitted by the Flower of Life changed directions. It no longer flew towards the Nether Butterfly but surged towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. What was even more terrifying was that the glow on the Nether Butterfly's body scattered and flew towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. In an instant, the nether butterfly's body glowed brightly as icy blue incantations appeared. The incantations prevented the glow on its body from dissipating. Boom! As its wings flapped, a terrifying icy blue light wave spread out towards Zhou like spatial ripples. Zhou gaze focused as he slashed out with the golden overlord's sword without any hesitation. It transformed into a golden sword beam that sliced through the icy blue light wave. The nether butterfly escaped into the underworld again, but under the eye of the Holy Hell King, Zhou could see the nether butterfly flying in the underworld. However, he couldn't touch it. The moment it escaped from the underworld, the golden overlord's sword slashed at its body. The indestructible sword beam killed the nether butterfly and tore its body into two. Ding! A dimensional crystal dropped. It was like a sapphire, and inside was the shadow of the nether butterfly. It was an essence energy skill crystal. The moment the nether butterfly died, its body immediately transformed into countless beams of light that surged towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. At the same time, the light on the flower of life was absorbed by the eye of the Holy Hell King. Limabai and company only saw the light that filled the sky surge towards Zhou glabella like a river of stars, but they couldn't see the eye of the Holy Hell King. Even the white-robed girl with the black umbrella and child medal were no exception. Their bodies emitted light that surged towards Zhou glabella. However, Limabai and company didn't emit any more light. Limabai and Gu Shanshui hurriedly unsummoned the white-robed girl with the black umbrella and child medal. Only then did they prevent the light from leaking out. As a large amount of light was sucked into the eye of the Holy Hell King, Zhou vaguely felt that the Holy Hell King life soul was about to evolve again. He couldn't help but be delighted. If the Holy Hell King evolved again, it would reach a perfect body. It would be Zhou second life soul to reach a perfect body. The originally beautiful flowers of life lost their radiance and withered in large sways. The originally beautiful river of flowers turned into a withered land of death in just a moment. All the light was absorbed by Zhou as the Holy Hell King life soul evolved almost at the same time. Chapter 780. The negative karma flames in the eye of the Holy Hell King bloomed like a lotus flower. Invisible negative karma flames surged out like layers of petals that enveloped Zhou body. Outsiders only saw Zhou floating in midair and couldn't see the invisible negative karma flames on his body, but they could sense that Zhou aura was constantly rising. When the aura reached its peak, Zhou body underwent a tremendous change. The Holy Hell King life soul completed its final evolution in the negative karma flames. Instantly, Zhou felt as though his entire body had entered a higher dimension, separated from reality. The real world became extremely filthy in his eyes, like a junkyard. However, his body remained untainted in such an environment. As the negative karma flames in the eye of the Holy Hell King were expended, the eye of the Holy Hell King gradually closed and vanished. When Buddha closes his eyes, there will be no more pure land in the world. The life in the filthy world will be abandoned by Buddha and the final purification will descend. Looking at the filthy world in front of him, Zhou seemed to come to a realization. Although the eye of the Holy Hell King was closed, his eyes didn't close. Nor did he completely sever himself from reality. Instead, he allowed himself to return to the world. The process of condensing a life soul wasn't only related to talent, bloodline, and essence energy art. It was also related to a person's concept and insight. No two people's life souls were identical because everyone's thoughts were different. It was impossible for them to be completely the same. If Zhou had been bent on escaping this filthy world, the Holy Hell King life soul would have evolved in the direction of a sage and eventually become a Buddha or a god. However, Zhou didn't have the thought of transcending. Instead, he entered the filthy world, so the Holy Hell King life soul evolved in another direction. Limabai and company looked at Zhou in midair. They originally felt that Zhou body emitted a holy pressure, as though he was a reincarnated Buddha. However, in the blink of an eye, Zhou Wen's entire body turned dim. It was as though a perfected immortal had been struck down to the mortal world, turning into a mortal. They could no longer sense the otherworldly aura from him. It was as though he was an extremely ordinary youth. Zhou Wen landed on the ground and stretched his back. He picked up the essence energy skill crystal that the hell butterfly dropped and asked Li Mabai and company, "There's only one crystal. How do we split it?" "I'm only here for the guardian cocoon. I don't want anything else," Li Mabai said. Gu Shanshui also shook his head and said, "I only hope that you can help me capture the corpse bug after this matter is over. These things are useless to me. In that case, I'll accept this primordial energy skill crystal." Zhou Wen didn't stand on ceremony as he took the crystal. Everyone continued on their way. The flowers of life in the flower river had all withered, and the originally beautiful flower river had become a barren land. There were no living creatures at all, and this allowed them to advance much faster. While rushing, Zhou Wen took out his phone to take a look. Indeed, he realized that the Holy Hell King Life Soul had evolved again and become a perfect body. However, to Zhou Wen's disappointment, the constitution attribute that corresponded to the Holy Hell King Life Soul remained at 40 points. It didn't increase to 41 points. This was the same as the advancement of the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. The corresponding essence energy stat didn't advance to 41. It remained at 40. My life soul has advanced to a perfect body, but my stats still haven't reached 41. How can I advance my stats? Zhou Wen was somewhat vexed. He had been looking forward to it for so long. His life soul had advanced to a perfect body, but his stats hadn't increased. This meant that his chances of advancing to the mythical stage by himself were still very slim. However, on second thought, Xia Zhihuang had used the power of 9 life providences and life souls. He had also absorbed the life essence of more than 10,000 epic experts. With the help of lightning, he had advanced to the mythical stage as a human. It didn't seem reasonable for him to advance to the mythical stage with just 4 perfect body life souls. With this in mind, Zhou Wen's heart suddenly stirred. Xia Zhihuang used 9 life providences and life souls to advance to the mythical stage. Does that mean that life souls and life providences are still helpful in advancing to the mythical stage? I didn't take the wrong path. It's just that a single life soul isn't enough to break through the restrictions of stats? Zhou Wen thought of his Tao Sutra and the First Order of Chaos. The two were very similar. They both strengthened his essence energy stat. If I advance the Chaos Egg Life Soul, which also strengthens my essence energy, to a perfect body and augment my essence energy stat with the 2 life souls, will I be able to break through to 41 points? With this in mind, Zhou Wen felt hope. Feeling much better, Zhou Wen carefully looked at the newly advanced perfect body life soul. Supreme Hell King, perfect body, a supreme existence in hell, the last faith of the source of evil. Zhou Wen could sense that Supreme Hell King was clearly different from the Holy Hell King. Without the eye of the Holy Hell King, he didn't have the supreme authority of the Holy Hell King. The current Supreme Hell King life soul made Zhou Wen feel like he truly belonged to hell. He could enter it with his body, not just through the eye of the Holy Hell King. However, Zhou Wen had yet to try what would happen if he really used the Supreme Hell King life soul to enter hell. Zhou Wen planned on finding an opportunity to give it a try in-game. In reality, it was best not to rashly attempt it. Even if he didn't enter hell, the strengthening of Supreme Hell King's senses wasn't something that the Holy Hell King could match. With the Supreme Hell King life soul augmenting him, Zhou Wen's senses were already terrifyingly strong. However, there were also disadvantages to this. Under such sharp senses, no matter what his eyes saw, he felt extremely dirty. It was as though he was in a garbage dump. It was unbearable. If it wasn't necessary, Zhou Wen usually wasn't willing to activate the Supreme Hell King life soul. Before long, the group crossed the Flower River and arrived near the legendary Valley of No Return. The guardian cocoon that Limabai mentioned wasn't in the Valley of No Return, but they had to pass through it. Back then, in order to refine the evil King Gu life soul, Limabai had accidentally fallen into a stone cave in the Valley of No Return when he was chasing a Gu king. Furthermore, he followed the stone cave through the Valley of No Return and arrived in an underground cave behind the Valley of No Return. It was there that he discovered the guardian cocoon. Now, Limabai led Zhou and company through the underground tunnel again. They circled around the Valley of No Return that everyone in the South District paled at the mention of and arrived at an underground cave. Indeed, they saw a guardian cocoon. The cocoon was gray and emitted an evil aura. It was different from any guardian Zhou had seen before. "We can't go any further. There's a terrifying mythical creature guarding it." Limabai pointed to the side of the gray cocoon. Zhou and company looked over and saw a calabash vine growing there. Chapter 781. The calabash vine looked very strange. Its roots and leaves were greenish-gray in color, like the color of rocks. It didn't look like a living creature, but more like a stone carving. There was only one calabash on the calabash vine that was 20 to 30 meters long. It was also greenish-gray in color. "Is that a plant-type dimensional creature?" Zhou asked. Limabai shook his head and said, "I can't be sure. It looks like a plant, but the calabash can spew out a Gu king. Therefore, I can't be sure if it's a plant or an animal." Limabai explained his understanding of the calabash vine in detail so that everyone could prepare themselves. Back then, Limabai had chased a Gu king and mistakenly entered this place. Just as he was about to catch up to the Gu king, it was sucked into the calabash. Limabai felt that something was amiss with the calabash vine, so he didn't chase after it. Instead, he used his companion beast to probe it. However, just as the companion beast rushed over, the Gu king that had previously burrowed into the calabash crawled out again. The Gu king was a king of blood-sucking Gu. It was at the epic stage. Back then, if Limabai wanted to advance the evil King Gu life soul, he needed to hunt an existence at the Gu king level. Back then, Limabai had the evil King Gu life soul. It could be said that apart from mythical Gu, he was immune to all Gu. It wasn't difficult to deal with a blood-sucking Gu king. However, to his surprise, after the blood-sucking Gu king came out of the calabash, it became extremely ferocious. Its strength underwent a tremendous change, as though it had advanced to the mythical stage. It directly killed Limabai's companion beast. If Limabai hadn't run quickly when he saw that something was amiss, he would have nearly died. Later, Limabai came a few more times, but he returned empty-handed. He was no match for the blood-sucking Gu king. Limabai suspected that the calabash vine was odd, so he wanted to get rid of it first. After thinking of a way to lure the blood-sucking Gu king away, he would get a fire-elemental companion beast to burn the calabash vine. However, to his surprise, before the fire-elemental companion beast could approach the calabash vine, another Gu king crawled out of the calabash and killed Limabai's fire-elemental companion beast. Later, Limabai thought of many methods, but they were useless. Even when his evil King Gu life soul reached the perfect body, he still failed to deal with the calabash vine. After John used the six-winged seraphim to fight Zhou, Limabai did a lot of investigations and learned about guardians. Only then did he realize that the truly precious thing wasn't the calabash vine, but the gray cocoon protected by the calabash vine. Unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to deal with the calabash vine. Even if he knew that there was a guardian there, he couldn't contract it. All he could do was cooperate with Zhou. After hearing Li Gu 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 of and Gu Gu God of Gu, Li of Gu, of Gu. That's what I see. Limabai looked at Zhou and said, "Do you want me to use a companion beast to lure out the Gu king inside?" Of Zhou of. Of a Zhou. Be it ancient or modern battles, intelligence was one of the most important factors. Therefore, when Li Mabai summoned his companion beast and charged at the calabash vine, he used Dr. Darkness's eyes of penetration to look at the bluish-gray calabash. Thankfully, the calabash wasn't a real stone. His eyes of penetration penetrated the calabash and saw what was inside. He was immediately alarmed. Inside the gourd, there were more than a dozen goo with different appearances. All of them looked strange and creepy. What was even stranger was that the goo and the calabash were fighting each other. When the companion beast Li Mabai summoned approached the calabash, a force controlled one of the goo and spat it out of the calabash. The goo looked like a scorpion, but it had dragonfly-like wings on its back. Its mouth was filled with fine teeth, making it look extremely terrifying. The companion beast Li Mabai released was an epic black tiger, but the goo flew onto it. Its tail stabbed into its body, instantly killing it. After killing the target, the goo was sucked into the calabash again. I've seen a total of 3 different goo kings. This is one of them, Li Mabai said. Strange. Gu Shanshui frowned and said, that goo looked like a snake-scorpion goo, but it has many characteristics that the snake-scorpion goo doesn't have. Furthermore, its strength is much stronger than the snake-scorpion goo. It has indeed reached the mythical stage. This is also what puzzles me. If the goo and the calabash entered later, there must be some benefits inside that can improve their strength greatly. Back then, after the blood-sucking goo king entered, its strength increased greatly, and its body underwent a huge change, Li Mabai said. I suspect that the calabash might be a natural goo pool, Gu Shanshui said with a heavy expression. The so-called goo pool was to put many goo worms in it and let them kill each other. In the end, the strongest goo would be born. Not only would that goo be the strongest, but it would also absorb the abilities and advantages of other goo worms in battle. Its strength was far from what ordinary goo worms could compare to. Gu Shanshui was only guessing, but Zhou could see it clearly. The goo inside were indeed fighting each other. Furthermore, it looked like a few of them already had mythical strength. Although the other goo hadn't reached the mythical stage, they were considered extremely powerful existences at the epic stage. This is simply a super goo pool. If the goo inside fight to the end, I wonder how powerful the goo king produced will be. It will probably be comparable to a top mythical creature, right? Zhou couldn't help but be tempted. If he could obtain this calabash, it would be excellent for nurturing goo. The only pity was that Zhou didn't know how to nurture goo. Even if a powerful goo king really appeared inside, Zhou could only kill it and see if a companion egg would drop. Zhou, what do you think? Li Mabai asked Zhou. I think Master Gu is right. That calabash might very well be a natural goo pool. There might be more than one mythical goo inside, but where did these goo come from? Zhou said. There are goo everywhere in the Valley of No Return. There are quite a number of mythical goo. I reckon the goo from the Valley of No Return crawled here and were sucked in by the calabash, Gu Shanshui said. What's your plan? Zhou asked Li Mabai. There's no particularly good solution. I can only lure the goo kings inside out one by one and kill them. I'll need to borrow your strength, Li Mabai said. Zhou thought for a moment and felt that it would be a waste to lure the goo kings inside out and kill them one by one. Chapter 782. From the looks of it, that's the only way. Although he found it a pity, Zhou didn't know how to rear goo, so it was useless even if he kept it. Li Mabai had a plan. Mute and Butterfly each summoned a companion beast. Together with Li Mabai's own companion beast, the 3 companion beasts looked identical. They were 3 bronze men. These 3 bronze men were epic companion beasts. Although they were relatively slow, their defenses were extremely powerful. Furthermore, they weren't afraid of the poison that goo were good at, nor were they afraid that it would invade their bodies. It was impossible to use it to kill a mythical goo, but it was an ideal choice if it was only used as bait. Could these be the bronze men from the founding emperor tomb? Zhou asked in surprise. Li Mabai nodded and said, "They're the bronze men from the founding emperor tomb. In order to obtain these 3 companion eggs, I spent a huge sum of money to buy 3 bronze men companion eggs from the Zhang family." Zhou was no stranger to the founding emperor tomb because it was too famous. Zhou had long wanted to see if there was a tiny palm symbol there, but he never had the chance to go. As there were many evil powers in the founding emperor tomb, ordinary people couldn't enter. Only the Zhang family was an expert in this aspect and could enter to hunt dimensional creatures. Therefore, very few companion beasts were produced in the founding emperor tomb. Furthermore, they were much more expensive than companion eggs of the same level. However, the companion beasts in the founding emperor tomb were indeed very unique. For example, the bronze men were very resistant to essence energy, and their bodies were strong enough. They weren't afraid of all kinds of toxins and microbes. They were very ideal scouts. However, due to the low production, it wasn't easy to obtain 3 bronze men. It was obvious that Li Mabai was determined to obtain them. After the 3 bronze men approached the calabash vine, the goo inside were indeed spewed out. However, this time, it wasn't the one from before. Instead, it was a goo that looked like a mosquito, but its body was protected by a carapace. Li Mabai told Zhou that this was the blood-sucking goo king he had previously chased. However, the blood-sucking goo king in the past wasn't this powerful. Now that the blood-sucking goo king was around, he couldn't afford to have any wounds. As long as there was a wound, even if it was a very small one, the blood-sucking goo king could constantly expand the wound. Blood would gush out until the person died of blood loss. Unfortunately, the bronze men didn't have blood, so the blood-sucking goo king's blood-sucking ability was useless against them. However, the blood-sucking goo king didn't just have the blood-sucking ability. The blood-sucking goo king flapped its wings and flew quickly. The bronze man's eyes could not keep up with its flying speed, and the blood-sucking goo king's mouth pierced his head. If it were an ordinary companion beast, it would definitely be severely injured. However, the bronze men were not afraid at all. It was just an extra hole in their heads. It did not affect them at all. The blood-sucking goo king even burrowed directly into the bronze man's head and came out from the other side. It only injured the bronze man, but it wasn't fatal. Just as Zhou was about to attack, the chick on his shoulder suddenly flapped its wings and flew over. The blood-sucking goo king, who was so mighty just now, was like a mouse that had seen a cat after seeing the bird. Its body suddenly turned soft, and it seemed that it did not even have the strength to resist. Although the chick was powerful, it was still growing. As for the blood-sucking goo king, it was already at the mythical stage. If it fought the chick with all its might, the chick probably wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage. However, in this world, everything had its vanquisher. The chick's restraint on goo was too powerful. The blood-sucking goo king's legs went limp. It didn't even dare escape, much less fight. The chick flew over and opened its mouth to peck at the blood-sucking goo king. The blood-sucking goo king's shell was too hard. It took it a few pecks to crack open the shell. Then, it peeled off the blood-sucking goo king and ate it. From beginning to end, the mythical blood-sucking goo king didn't resist too intensely. A mythical goo was eaten just like that. Li Mabai and company were dumbfounded. Apart from Gu Shanshui, who knew the chick's background, everyone else watched in shock as the chick unleashed its might. Although they knew that the chick was very powerful when it spat out fire to burn the jellyfish fungi, they never expected it to be this powerful. The mythical blood-sucking goo king didn't even have the courage to resist. This couldn't be described as powerful. It was a dimensional blow. After the chick finished eating the blood-sucking goo king, it clearly wasn't satisfied. It flew towards the calabash, hoping to peck it open and eat the goo inside. However, after pecking a few times, the calabash remained unharmed. Even the golden flames that spewed out failed to burn the calabash. The calabash seemed to know how powerful the chick was. No matter how it tortured it outside, it didn't dare spit out the goo inside. Zhouwen called the chick back and got Li Mabai and company to release the bronze man to lure it again, but it was useless. The calabash refused to spit out the goo inside no matter what. Zhouwen raised the golden overlord's sword and slashed out a golden sword aura at the calabash. The golden sword aura's ever victorious and unstoppable took effect, leaving a crack on the calabash. However, the golden sword beam disappeared when it rushed into the calabash. The crack automatically recovered and quickly vanished. If I had known that inviting you would save me so much trouble, I would have invited you over even if I had to go bankrupt. Li Mabai and company walked over as well. Although he failed to slice off the calabash or kill all the goo inside, the calabash didn't dare make any abnormal movements. Li Mabai had achieved his goal. Ignoring the retreating calabash, he walked towards the gray cocoon of the guardian. Seeing how magical the calabash was, Zhouwen wanted to get it off, but after slashing a few times, he was sucked in by the calabash. He failed to slice it off. With the chick standing by the side covetously, ready to eat the goo inside at any moment, the calabash didn't dare make any abnormal movements. It remained in a stalemate. Li Mabai had already walked to the cocoon of the guardian. Without any hesitation, he cut his finger and let his blood drip onto the cocoon. Everyone looked at the blood that dripped onto the cocoon of the guardian. Even Zhouwen temporarily stopped attacking the calabash and looked at the cocoon of the guardian. Zhouwen naturally didn't wish for Li Mabai to succeed. If Li Mabai succeeded, there would be nothing left for him. Blood slowly flowed down the cocoon of the guardian, but to Li Mabai's disappointment, the drop of blood flowed down from the cocoon and dripped to the ground. It failed to seep in. Master! Butterfly wore a look of disappointment. She wanted to comfort Li Mabai, but she didn't know what to say. A single failure is nothing. If it doesn't work this time, there's always the next time. If this path doesn't work, I'll switch to another path. As long as I continue forward, there will always be a path to my destination. Li Mabai didn't look too disappointed. He sorted out his emotions and said to Zhouwen, "Zhouwen, according to our previous agreement, it's your turn now. If you don't gain anything, I hope you can give them a chance." Chapter 783. Sure. Zhouwen nodded in agreement. If he couldn't kill this guardian, there was no harm in letting others give it a try. However, Zhouwen didn't immediately take action. He had a nagging feeling that the calabash was a hidden danger. Now that the chick was suppressing it, the calabash didn't dare act rashly. However, it would be troublesome if it released the goo inside when fighting the guardian. Wait a moment. I'll think of a way to pluck this calabash, Zhouwen said to Li Mabai and company. Butterfly joked, just drip some blood on the cocoon. The calabash isn't a problem. There's no need to go through so much trouble, right? Are you afraid that you won't be recognized by the guardian? Zhouwen didn't answer her as he continued studying the calabash in front of him. This calabash was indeed a good item. It could even control mythical goo. Furthermore, it could make them kill each other and evolve by devouring each other. This was actually very similar to the phone's companion beast fusion function. However, it was a more primitive and crude version. It wasn't as modern as the phone's fusion function. Zhouwen thought to himself, if I can get this calabash back, it will be explainable if I take out some strange fusion pets in the future. But how can I get this calabash back? Is this thing considered a dimensional creature? If I slash the calabash off, will it drop a companion egg? The chick pecked and clawed at the calabash, but the effects weren't good. Even its golden flames didn't have much effect on the calabash. Zhouwen slashed a few times with the golden overlord sword. Although he could split the calabash, the space inside the calabash seemed to have the characteristic of spatial extension. When the sword beam rushed in, it gradually dissipated. It didn't cause too much damage. Furthermore, the calabash could rapidly recover. Since I can't slash the calabash, I'll remove its root. Zhouwen glanced at the roots of the calabash vine and planned on attacking from there. The Golden Overlord's sword slashed down with an indomitable sword beam. Before the sword beam could slash at the roots of the calabash vine, the calabash suddenly spat out more than 10 goo. Goo of all shapes and sizes rushed at Zhouwen. Some were as small as sesame seeds, while others were as big as ferocious beasts. Furthermore, their abilities were different. Everyone was shocked. They never expected there to be so many goo in the calabash. Gu Shanshui and Li Mabai reflexively prepared to fight. A bird's cry sounded as the chick craned its neck and let out a long cry. The goo that were charging at Zhouwen immediately went limp from fright and fell from the sky as though they were paralyzed. Only the few mythical goo charged at Zhouwen. However, from the trembling of their bodies, it was clear that they were extremely afraid. It was only because they were controlled by the calabash that they had no choice but to charge over. When the little bird saw that they still dared to rush over, it immediately became furious. It flapped its wings and leaped up, rushing over to peck at those goo insects. The chick's strength wasn't as strong as the mythical goo, but for some reason, the mythical goo didn't dare resist. They were pecked by the chick until they bled profusely. A small mythical goo was swallowed by the chick. The chick wasn't afraid of the goo parasitizing in its body at all. Instantly, it looked mighty as though an emperor was dealing with a group of eunuchs. The eunuchs didn't dare fight back. It's no wonder Worm Dugu said that phoenixes are the nemesis of goo. After Gu Shanshui saw the chick, he treated it like a god. This phoenix's restraints on goo are just too strong. Zhouwen originally imagined that there would be a fierce battle, but from the looks of it, there was no need for him to do anything. The chick could finish off all the goo by itself. Li Mabai looked at the mighty chick and seemed to be in thought. It looked like he had guessed the chick's origins. It's no wonder Zhouwen dared to take the risk to come to the South District. So he has such a divine item on him. Li Mabai was enlightened. He knew that it wasn't because he had moved Zhouwen, but because Zhouwen had the confidence to protect his life, which was why he had followed him to the Valley of No Return. The chick unleashed its might. In a short while, it swallowed more than 10 goo. Its body clearly swelled up as its stomach swelled. Zhouwen suddenly recalled that the antelope had brought the chick up Mount Laojuan's golden peak. After returning, the chick was as fat as a ball. Back then, Zhouwen was puzzled as to why the chick had gained so much weight. Now that he thought about it, the chick must have obtained some benefits from Mount Laojuan's golden peak. It's no wonder I felt that the chick seemed to have grown a lot after that. So it wasn't because of time, but because it swallowed some benefit. Zhouwen now understood why the phoenix had given him the chick back then. This thing had eaten several mythical goo and nearly 10 epic goo, but it was only as fat as a ball. It didn't immediately grow up. If he wanted to raise it to adulthood, he didn't know how many resources he would have to expend. That phoenix probably couldn't afford to raise so many baby phoenixes, so it wanted to help it choose a good family to eat and stay for free. For some reason, it chose him. After losing all the goo, the calabash trembled. However, it was only a calabash after all. It couldn't escape like animal-type dimensional creatures. Zhouwen didn't stand on ceremony as he drew his sword and slashed. With a few strikes, he severed the roots of the calabash vine. The moment the calabash's roots were severed, the calabash vine immediately withered. The bluish-gray leaves also shrank and fell. The color of the calabash gradually turned light gray before finally turning grayish-white. Zhouwen slashed at the calabash vine that had also turned grayish-white. The calabash vine turned to dust, leaving only the calabash intact. Zhouwen extended his hand and sucked the calabash into his hand. He squeezed it hard and realized that the calabash was still as hard as before. It didn't turn to powder like the vines and leaves. Although the calabash was still there was no vitality on it. Zhouwen didn't know if the calabash could still be used, so he put it away first. The chick was so full that it staggered as it walked. It looked like it would fall to the ground and roll away at any moment. Retreat a little. I'm going to take action, Zhouwen said to Li Mabai and company. The guardians were generally very strong. Even if Zhouwen could kill the guardian inside, there would definitely be a huge battle. In order not to implicate them, he got them to retreat a little in advance to prevent them from escaping in time. It's just a drop of blood. There's no need to go through so much trouble, right? Butterfly said. Let's go. Li Mabai seemed to notice something as he instructed Butterfly and Mute to retreat with him. Although Gu Shanshui didn't know why Zhouwen wanted them to retreat, he still retreated with Gu Lu and Gu He. Chapter 784. Could it be that Zhouwen is thin-skinned and afraid of being mocked by us if he fails? Butterfly said as she walked. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Li Mabai guessed something, but he didn't know what Zhouwen was going to do. From his point of view, Zhouwen definitely wouldn't just drip a blood contract. It was very likely that he would use some method to increase the success rate of the contract. In fact, Li Mabai had previously thought of a similar method. However, because he had transferred the evil King Gu life soul to Li Xian, his physique was much weaker. He didn't dare to use some of the methods he could use in the past, so he gave up on the idea of using some special method. Li Mabai was very interested in what method Zhouwen wanted to use. He hoped that Zhouwen could succeed. This way, he could use Zhouwen's method as a reference. He still had a chance in the future. When they were far enough away, Zhouwen moved as well. However, he didn't walk towards the cocoon of the guardian. Instead, he also distanced himself from it. However, as he distanced himself, he summoned Tyrant Behemoth. Boom! Tyrant Behemoth was more than 3 meters tall, but its body was heavier than steel. When it landed in the cave, it caused the entire cave to tremble. That's Tyrant Behemoth. Tyrant Behemoth ranked 4th. That's actually Zhouwen's companion beast. Butterfly immediately cried out in surprise when she saw Tyrant Behemoth. Gu Lu and company were also alarmed as their eyes nearly popped out. Tyrant Behemoth's name was probably known to everyone. Many experts in the Federation were trying to find out who Tyrant Behemoth's owner was, but they never expected it to be Zhouwen's companion beast. Previously, Gu Lu thought that Zhouwen was young and frivolous, but now, with his terrifying pets, he was probably not weaker than the top experts from the Dugu family. He did have the right to be frivolous. What does he want to do by summoning Tyrant Behemoth? Li Mabai looked at Zhouwen in surprise. He felt that something was amiss. Zhouwen didn't seem to be using any means to contract the guardian. Indeed, under everyone's horrified gazes, Tyrant Behemoth roared and punched the cocoon of the guardian. He wants to kill the protector and not form a contract with it? Butterfly's eyes widened in disbelief. This was beyond her imagination. Boom! Tyrant Behemoth shattered the gray cocoon with a punch, revealing the guardian inside. As for Zhouwen, he had already used the invisibility cloak to hide himself. At the same time, he summoned demonic neonate and hugged her in his arms, using the invisibility cloak to cover her. After all, reality wasn't a game where everything was over once he died. Therefore, Zhouwen was much more careful than usual. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find a guardian to kill in the game, he wouldn't have taken the risk in reality. Even in his invisible state, Zhouwen had no intention of approaching the guardian. He wanted to figure out what abilities the guardian had. The guardian in the gray cocoon was covered in black insect armor. It had ant-like antennae on its head, cicada-like wings on its back, eyes like snakes, and 4 scorpion-like tails on its back. This guardian looked like a humanoid Gu, and its body was filled with an evil aura. Just as Tyrant Behemoth's fist was about to strike the guardian's figure suddenly turned blurry. Tyrant Behemoth's fist only hit an illusion. Looking up, He saw the guardian standing upside down at the top of the cave like a bat. Its snake-like eyes stared at Tyrant Behemoth. The fingers on its hands spread open as thin silk blades crisscrossed like spiderwebs, enveloping Tyrant Behemoth below. Tyrant Behemoth exerted strength in its feet and shattered the rocks. Its body soared into the air, and raised its fist to strike the spiderweb in the air, hoping to blast it and the guardian to death. However, when his fist struck the spiderweb-like silk blades, they didn't suffer any force at all. It was as though he had punched the air. As for the silk blades, they retracted and wrapped around Tyrant Behemoth's body. Tyrant Behemoth was like a huge fish that had fallen into a fishing net. The more it struggled, the tighter the thin silk blades wrapped around it. Furthermore, the thin silk blades had very strong elasticity. Tyrant Behemoth unleashed its strength in an attempt to break the thin silk blades, but all it could do was widen the thin silk net blades a little. When Tyrant Behemoth relaxed its strength, the thin silk net blades wrapped even tighter. The guardian, who was standing upside down at the top of the cave, flashed and appeared behind Tyrant Behemoth as though it had teleported. Its barbed palms and feet hooked onto Tyrant Behemoth's back as it opened its mouth. The tongue in its mouth was like a blood-colored arrow that stabbed into Tyrant Behemoth's neck. Roar! Tyrant Behemoth directly activated absolute strength, but the powerful strength failed to help it tear apart the silk blade. It pushed open the net blades, but it was unable to tear them apart. Guardians are indeed stronger than mythical creatures. A mythical companion beast like Tyrant Behemoth is basically the pinnacle of mythical creatures, but it's still inferior to a guardian. Zhouwen will probably suffer greatly this time. Master, let's quickly retreat, Butterfly said to Li Mabai. Li Mabai didn't answer as he searched his surroundings, but he didn't seem to find a target. He frowned and asked, "Where did Zhouwen go?" Everyone was taken aback. Their gazes were attracted by Tyrant Behemoth and the Guardian. They were watching the battle and didn't notice Zhouwen's whereabouts. He turned his head and looked around, but he didn't see Zhouwen. He only saw a gold and white bird on a rock not far away, watching Tyrant Behemoth and the Guardian battle. At that moment, Zhouwen was wearing the invisibility cloak and had activated Sigh of the King. Not long after, his strength reached the level of activating Slaughterer. Without any hesitation, he activated the Wheel of Destiny of the invisibility cloak and secretly approached the Guardian with demonic neonate. The invisibility power of the invisibility cloak was just too useful. The Guardian didn't discover the invisible Zhouwen. He lay on Tyrant Behemoth's back and used his tongue to devour the energy in Tyrant Behemoth's body. Zhouwen had already arrived behind it, but it still didn't notice him. Without any hesitation, Zhouwen summoned Light Concealment Sword and slashed at the Guardian's neck with immortal slaying. Almost at the same time, Demonic Neonate in his arms unsheathed her demonic sword and slashed at the Guardian's neck. The two swords, one on the left and one on the right, sliced down like a pair of scissors. The distance was too close, so the Guardian had no room to react. Li Mabai and company didn't discover Zhouwen's traces, but they suddenly heard a tragic cry. When they turned their heads, they realized that Zhouwen was floating in the air. As for the Guardian's head, it had already been chopped off and fell to the ground. Plop! The Guardian's headless corpse fell from the sky and fell to the ground. The thin net blades on Tyrant Behemoth's body vanished as well. Zhouwen carefully floated in the air and flung his palm as though he was shaking off the blood on his palm. Butterfly, Gulu, and company were already shocked speechless. This was because they couldn't see the invisible Light Concealment Sword. They imagined that Zhouwen had beheaded the Guardian. Chapter 785. Is this person a devil? Butterfly looked at Zhouwen and felt a chill run down her spine. They had gone through so much trouble to come here so that they could sign a contract with the Guardian and obtain greater strength. As for Zhouwen, he had actually chopped off the Guardian's head with one palm. Although they knew that this person wasn't an enemy, the difference in strength still left them in despair. They even trembled. However, Li Mabai didn't think so. His eyes burned as he stared intently at Zhou Wen as though he had discovered a new continent. So the path can be taken this way? Li Mabai felt as though there was a ball of fire burning in his body. There was no fire in Zhou Wen's body, but as the guardian's body disintegrated and vanished, a force surged into his body, causing Slaughterer life soul to automatically switch out. After absorbing the energy, it became stronger. To Zhou Wen's disappointment, although Slaughterer was becoming stronger, it failed to advance to a perfect body even after the energy was completely absorbed. How many guardians do I have to kill before Slaughterer can advance to a perfect body? Zhou Wen sighed inwardly. Li Mabai, Gu Shanshui, and company had already returned. Zhou Wen said, "Sorry, I can't give you a chance to try." Li Mabai smiled and said, "It's fine. That's not important. If it's convenient, can you tell me why you killed the Guardian? Why didn't you sign a contract with him?" "There's no need for a contract." Zhou Wen couldn't explain too much. "That's right. You really don't need it anymore," Li Mabai said. Butterfly, Gu Lu, and company felt that Zhou Wen's words were too arrogant, but when they thought of the scene of the Guardian's head falling off, they felt powerless to refute him. "Since we're already here, why don't we go to the entrance of the Valley of No Return to take a look?" Zhou Wen was still wondering if he could find the tiny palm symbol in the Valley of No Return. With the Valley of No Return, he would have a place to grind for companion beasts like Gu in the future. "All right, with you around, the Valley of No Return probably won't be able to retain anyone. It's good to broaden your horizons," Li Mabai said with a smile. "I'm just taking a look from the outside. I don't plan on entering." Zhou Wen shook his head. Although the chick could suppress the Gu, it hadn't grown up yet. If there were too many Gu, it wouldn't be able to take care of them. Or perhaps there were Gu that weren't afraid of the bird. If they really went all out, the bird might not be able to defeat a mythical Gu. Zhou Wen was very surprised that the chick could kill those mythical Gu. He didn't know if it was because of the noble phoenix bloodline in the chick or if it had some special power. Furthermore, after using immortal slaying, Zhou Wen's strength had been depleted. His body was still in a weak state. Although he wasn't as miserable as when he used immortal slaying in the past, his combat strength had been greatly affected. Zhou Wen didn't wish to take the risk at such a time. The group exited the underground cave and arrived at the outskirts of the Valley of No Return. Zhou Wen saw that there were layers of valleys here. There was a valley within a valley, but he didn't know how big the space inside was. He only heard from locals like Gu Shanshui that people who entered the Valley of No Return would most likely not return. That was why it was named the Valley of No Return. However, it wasn't that no one could come back alive. There were still people who came back alive. It was just that those people didn't go deep into the valley. Most of them just wandered around the entrance of the valley before coming out. Zhou Wen only wanted to wander around the valley's entrance to find the tiny palm symbol, but he had no intention of entering. His luck seemed to be surprisingly good. After circling the valley for a while, Zhou Wen found the extremely inconspicuous palm symbol on a mountain wall. The tiny palm symbol was covered in dense grass and was covered in moss. If Zhou Wen didn't have Truth Listener's ability, he wouldn't have discovered it. He snapped a picture with his mysterious phone and the word, "downloading," appeared on the screen, making Zhou Wen heave a sigh of relief. "I've gained quite a lot this time. I downloaded the Valley of No Return dungeon, killed a guardian, and got the chick to eat quite a number of Gu. I reckon it should be able to grow a little after digesting it, right?" Zhou Wen felt that he hadn't come for nothing. However, Li Mabai's trip had been in vain. He hadn't obtained any benefits. Since Gu Shanshui wanted to go to Chiang Rai to catch corpse bugs, Zhou Wen could only accompany him to Chiang Rai. Li Mabai thought for a moment and said, "Master Gu, if you don't mind, let's go and take a look. Li, it's naturally for the best if you can come along." Gu Shanshui happily accepted. Everyone walked along the Flower River towards Chiang Rai. After walking 200 to 300 kilometers, they saw a flower of life that hadn't withered. Zhou rode the great Might Vajra bull at the back of the team as he played with his phone. The Valley of No Return dungeon had been downloaded, so Zhou entered to familiarize himself with the environment. The Valley of No Return was actually surrounded by mountains. Only a sliver of sky between the mountains could one enter. The mountain walls on both sides were very close, allowing only one person to pass through. The blood-colored avatar walked in sideways as Truth Listener's ability was constantly activated. At the same time, he switched his essence energy art to the small perfection of wisdom. With the augmentation of the 8 perfections Wisdom Life Providence and the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, Zhou senses became extremely sharp. Even without using Truth Listener, he could see everything clearly. After walking for a short while, Zhou discovered a problem. There were many tiny holes on the rock walls on both sides. As the holes were too small, one would only mistake them for the patterns on the stone walls with the naked eye. However, Zhou could tell that they weren't the patterns of the stone, but tiny holes. In those tiny holes, there were tiny worms that would occasionally reveal their head. As they were too small, if an ordinary person wasn't careful and allowed them to crawl onto their body, they would probably be able to burrow into their pores. The chick couldn't be brought into the game, so Zhou didn't have a good way to restrain these worms. All he could do was summon Tai Sui and see if it would eat these worms. Although Tai Sui wasn't very interested in these worms, it still devoured them under Zhou's orders. A large number of notifications appeared on the game screen. They were all notifications of killing mortal creatures. Occasionally, a notification of killing a legendary creature would pop up. There were very few items that dropped, so they were basically useless. With Tai Sui's help, Zhou passed through the sliver and arrived in the valley. As this was a chain of valleys, what Zhou could see was a semicircular valley that wasn't too big. Inside was a grassland that looked verdant and delightful. However, if one had extraordinary vision, they would discover that there were many green caterpillars in the grass. They almost fused with the grass, making it difficult to distinguish their figures. Zhou summoned Fire Furnace Queen and turned the grass into a sea of fire. Then, notifications of killing legendary green-furred goo kept popping up. There seemed to be quite a number of goo. This is a good place to grind. I wonder if there will be groups of epic goo inside? Zhou had already seen the notification that a green-furred goo had dropped a companion egg. Chapter 786. A large number of green-haired goo were killed, dropping more than 10 green-haired goo companion eggs and quite a number of dimensional crystals. As he walked deeper into the valley, it became narrower again. Further in, there was another small valley in the shape of a horse's hoof. It was even smaller than the valley in front. The terrain of this valley was much lower. The ground was completely covered by clear water. The water level was very shallow, barely reaching Zhou's calf. He could see to the bottom at a glance. There were many aquatic plants growing in the water, making it look very beautiful. It was as clean as a paradise. However, in Zhou's eyes, such a beautiful and clean place wasn't that beautiful. There were many leech-like goo on the rocks and aquatic plants at the bottom of the water. If he rashly entered the water, he would probably be sucked dry of his blood. Zhou summoned the water snake companion beast he had previously obtained. This was a water elemental snake from the island where the 6-winged guardian dragon was. Its entire body was condensed from water, so it naturally wasn't afraid of poison or blood-sucking abilities. After it entered the water, it directly devoured the leeches. When the leeches entered its body, they were immediately sucked dry of their water, turning into small balls of jerky. Killed legendary creature, leech goo notifications constantly popped up on the phone screen. The water snake swam quickly in the water, and wherever it passed, the leech goo were sucked dry of their water. It's no wonder so many people enter the Valley of No Return. Not only are there many types of dimensional creatures here, but their abilities are also extremely sinister. If I'm not careful, I'll be hit. It's not easy to leave alive. Zhouwen wasn't excited about the leech goo. He didn't get the water snake to continue its slaughter. He flew into the air and headed for the next valley. The valley in front of him branched off. One path led to the left, while the other led to the right. Zhouwen chose the left path and entered the next valley. This valley was clearly much larger than the previous one. The water in the valley in front flowed out from here. He could see a waterfall flowing inside the valley. There were still many leech goo in the water. However, apart from the leech goo, he could also see black tadpoles swimming around. Groups of tadpoles could be seen everywhere in the water. However, these tadpoles were extremely large. He estimated that he could only carry one tadpole with both hands. Zhouwen was somewhat curious as to what goo the tadpoles were, so he got the water snake to rush towards the tadpoles. Just like before, the water snake swallowed the tadpoles, wanting to suck all the water in their bodies. But who knew that after the tadpoles were swallowed, their bodies would immediately explode, forcibly blowing up the water snake's body. After the explosion, the tadpoles did not die, but turned into a group of small tadpoles, still swimming in the water. The water snake's body was originally formed from water. After it was blown apart, it quickly condensed again and devoured a large number of tadpoles. The little tadpoles exploded again, blowing up the water snake's body. At the same time, it turned into even more little tadpoles. The number of tadpoles kept increasing, and they became smaller and smaller. However, there was no sign of death. After a few more times, the tadpoles had already become the size of sesame seeds, and it seemed like they could continue to explode. This dimensional creature is rather interesting. It can actually explode and split infinitely. I wonder how small it can be? Zhouwen got the water snake to continue devouring the tadpoles, hoping to see their limits. In the end, he realized that when the tadpoles became the size of needle tips, their bodies would explode, unable to continue splitting. It split a total of 5 times and self-destructed 5 times. Unfortunately, the power of the self-destruction is a little weak. Zhouwen silently did the math. Killed legendary creature, ancient tadpole. A notification appeared in-game. Although the skill was not bad, its level was a little low. The power of the self-destruction wasn't strong enough, so Zhouwen lost interest. However, soon, a rather special ancient tadpole attracted Zhouwen's attention. Among the group of ancient tadpoles, there was a dark gold tadpole. It was clearly different from the other tadpoles. Zhouwen got the water snake to rush over and devour the ancient tadpole. With a bang, a huge wave rose in the water. The water snake's body was blasted apart, and even the water elemental core in its body was shattered. It died just like that. The power of this self-destruction is a little too great. Zhouwen was somewhat surprised as he looked at the dark gold tadpole that had split apart in the water. He summoned another companion beast. This was the epic electric eel that Zhouwen had previously obtained in the underground pool city. After the electric eel rushed over, it spewed out an electric current. The dark gold tadpoles were struck by the electric current and immediately split apart and exploded. The electric eel was very fast as it quickly fled in the water, dodging the explosive power of the dark gold tadpole. Once again, it spewed out an electric current at the smaller dark gold tadpole. It was obvious that the dark gold tadpole was at the epic stage. Its explosive power was extremely powerful, enough to kill most epic creatures of the same level. Furthermore, after Zhouwen's experiments, he realized that these dark gold tadpoles could split and explode more than the ancient tadpoles from before. They could split and explode a total of 7 times. Ding. Killed dark gold ancient tadpole. Discovered companion egg. Zhouwen realized that there was an additional dark gold companion egg in the water. Delighted, he picked it up and hatched it. Soon, there was an additional dark gold ancient tadpole in his companion beast column. Dark gold ancient tadpole, epic life providence, split life soul, fusion strength, 34 speed, 31 constitution, 31 essence energy, 36 talent skill, self-destruct companion form, grenade. This thing is really special. Zhou summoned the dark gold ancient tadpole in-game and a dark gold grenade appeared in his hand. Zhou threw it out. When the dark gold ancient tadpole landed in the water, it immediately exploded, splitting into a group of tiny dark gold ancient tadpole grenades. After the tiny dark gold ancient tadpoles were suppressed by the power, they continued to explode. However, it was different from the legendary ancient tadpoles. After the dark gold ancient tadpoles self-destructed, as long as they weren't suppressed by the power for a period of time, they would automatically gather together and become a large dark gold ancient tadpole again. The number of splits would also return to normal. Unless they self-destructed 7 times in a row, the dark gold ancient tadpole could slowly recover and wouldn't die. This is good stuff. If many dark gold ancient tadpoles self-destruct together, the power will be quite impressive. Zhou searched the valley again and realized that there would be a dark gold ancient tadpole in every group of ancient tadpoles. Zhou specifically targeted the dark gold ancient tadpoles, hoping to have more companion eggs drop. However, after killing more than 10 dark gold ancient tadpoles, no companion eggs dropped. Zhou had already arrived near the waterfall. Just as he was about to continue searching, he discovered an especially huge ancient tadpole in the pool beneath the waterfall. Chapter 787. The tadpole was more than a meter long, and its head was dozens of centimeters in diameter. When it swung its tail, it stirred the water, creating tiny vortexes. Its body was relatively light in color. It wasn't as black as the legendary ancient tadpole, nor did it emit a golden glow like the epic dark gold ancient tadpole. It was a relatively light gray that leaned toward white. When Zhou saw it, it had already discovered the electric eel. With a flick of its tail, it tore through the waves like a torpedo and quickly slammed into the electric eel. The electric eel launched an electric attack, but when the electric current struck the giant tadpole, it didn't explode. Boom! The giant tadpole collided with the electric current and slammed into the electric eel. Then, Zhou saw a terrifying explosion detonate all the ancient tadpoles in the valley. The explosion of the giant tadpole was already very terrifying. Furthermore, the tadpoles that split off from the explosion slammed into the other epic and legendary tadpoles, constantly producing a chain explosion. Zhou realized that something was amiss as he condensed a protective essence energy skill to resist the explosion. However, the terrifying explosion blasted apart the blood-colored avatar's protective essence energy and penetrated its armor. The tadpole that had burrowed into its body exploded again. After a series of explosions, the blood-colored avatar died. Isn't this explosion a little too powerful? Zhou was somewhat alarmed. The tadpole was clearly a mythical existence. It exploded and split again, causing all the ancient tadpoles in the valley to explode. Unless it was a mythical creature with extremely strong defense, it was impossible to withstand it. After entering the game again, Zhou was obedient this time. He didn't enter himself and summoned Tyrant Behemoth to rush into the valley where the mythical tadpole was. Soon, Zhou heard a chain explosion outside the valley. The explosion caused the water in the valley to splatter everywhere as the water level in the valley outside rose significantly. After a while, the explosions finally stopped. Zhou roughly counted that there were a total of 9 intense explosions. It was likely that the mythical tadpole had experienced 9 splits and explosions. On the game screen, the news of the death of various ancient tadpoles had already flooded the screen. The last message was especially eye-catching. Killed mythical creature, ancient splitting tadpole. Discovered companion egg. Zhou entered the valley and saw Tyrant Behemoth standing in the water with many wounds on its body. He couldn't help but be slightly alarmed. Despite using absolute strength, Tyrant Behemoth was still injured by the explosion. Although it was only a minor injury, the ancient splitting tadpole's self-destruction was already extremely terrifying. The companion egg landed in the water. Apart from the mythical companion egg, there were also many dimensional crystals and tiny companion eggs scattered in the water. They were likely left behind by the legendary and epic tadpoles. Zhou first picked up the mythical companion egg and chose to hatch it. Soon, the mythical ancient splitting tadpole appeared in the pet bar. It looked no different from before. Ancient splitting tadpole, mythical life providence, split life soul, fusion wheel of fortune, death parasite, strength, 81 speed, 76 constitution, 77 essence energy, 81 innate skill, self-destruct companion form, grenade. The ancient splitting tadpole's attributes were already quite terrifying. Both of its attributes had reached a peak of 81 points. It was just that he did not know what kind of ability parasitic death had. However, just the 9 splits and the ability to self-destruct was already rather terrifying. To be able to injure Tyrant Behemoth in its absolute strength state was already very powerful. Unfortunately, the ancient splitting tadpole will really die once it self-destructs 9 times. I can't use it casually outside the game, but there's no need to worry about it in-game. Zhou thought of Explosive Fiend Man, who also had the ability to self-destruct. His self-destruct was even more ferocious. He could only self-destruct once. He didn't even have a second chance. The splitting tadpole could self-destruct at least 9 times. As long as it didn't self-destruct 9 times in a row, it wouldn't really die. It was still possible to control it and use it in reality. I wonder if I can fuse Splitting Tadpole with Explosive Fiend Man. If Explosive Fiend Man also has such a splitting ability. Zhou didn't dare continue thinking. Just the thought of Explosive Fiend Man self-destructing and splitting into smaller Explosive Fiend Men that would then explode everywhere left his scalp tingling. Looking at the compatibility between Explosive Fiend Man and Splitting Tadpole, he realized that it was only a pathetic 24%. If he fused them, the chances of failure were close to 80%. Although they both have the ability to self-destruct, it looks like the two aren't the same type. Zhou had no choice but to dismiss the idea of fusion. The Valley of No Return was already a dead end. There was no way in, so Zhou had no choice but to retreat to the fork and walk towards the valley on the right to see what was inside. The valley on the right was completely different from the valley on the left. After entering the valley on the right, the temperature suddenly dropped. After taking a few steps, frost and snow appeared on the ground. The valley on the right was basically a snow valley. The deeper he went, the thicker the snow became. After taking a few steps, the phone screen suddenly turned black. The blood-colored avatar had died for some reason. From the looks of it, there's something wrong with the snow. Zhou roughly understood the problem. However, for his Supreme Hell King life soul to not discover the problem, the thing in the snow was definitely not simple. Just as he was about to drip his blood to respawn and continue grinding in the Valley of No Return, he suddenly heard Gu Shanshui say, "We've reached the end of the Flower River. In another 5 kilometers, we'll reach the periphery of Chiang Rai." Before the dimensional storms, this area was the intersection of 3 countries. It's the famous Golden Triangle. It used to be very chaotic, and it's not a good place now. Not only are there many dimensional zones, but there are also all sorts of evil essence energy art. Gu, Kuminthong, black magic, witchcraft, Buddhist scriptures, and the essence energy arts of the other zones can be seen here. It's very chaotic. Furthermore, it's very easy for something to happen. You have to be careful here. It's best not to eat or take other people's things. Gu Shanshui paused for a moment before continuing. Chiang Rai is in this area. Now, there are three famous families in Chiang Rai. The biggest one is the Shao family. Not only are the Shao family proficient in Buddha plaques and Kuman Thong, but they also have deep attainments in Gu and black magic. Legend has it that their family has a mythical Kuman Thong that's extremely powerful. Anyone who provokes their family doesn't have a good ending. Isn't Kuman Thong a life soul? Zhou asked in puzzlement. Gu Shanshui explained, Kuman Thong was originally a witchcraft to nurture a spirit infant. It's divided into Heaven Child, Earth Child, and Man Child. After the dimensional storms, someone used the method of nurturing Kuman Thong to create a rapid life soul. They used the nurtured Kuman Thong as their life soul. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.